Double teaming destiny.
A one-state solution, like having a single state with equal rights.
No.
Wait, can you flesh out why you think that's like ridiculous?
Why? Because why would any Jewish person want to live in one state where now they're an ethnic minority against a group of people that have been trying to kill them for 80 years, and like who've elected a party who literally like wants to eliminate all of Israel and ship out all the Jews, and who align themselves with other people saying, you know, like death to Israel, death to America, death to the Jews. Hold on. Why would the terrorist group not capture more civilian hostages if capturing them got it everything it wanted?
Like
No, stop. No, that's not true. Stop.
Actually,
Dooby, you're lying. Stop
How am I
lying.
lying?
Keith and some people that were on the bad guy's side ended up getting amnesty when they should have been held accountable and was at peace with the
And let me tell you how I tortured each and every one of them, and maybe I'm even glad about it, right? But that's all you had. I want to say from the start that I had envisioned this as a 2v2 debate, but Destiny's like, I can handle it by myself. Okay, well, whatever. So here we are. So just here's my friend Dooby. Dooby and I, we're on the same side here. Double teaming destiny. And Steven is here. How are you, Steven?
Hi, I'm doing great.
All right. I wanted to have this debate because, I mean, we talked last time, but I came in there really just to talk about Biden. But I'm passionate about this issue, and then we just started talking about Israel. So I wanted to have a more formal thing, but here we are. Okay. So, guess I want to start off with just like a few questions. Like, what do you think Israel's goals are in this war?
Like immediate goals is probably trying to disable Hamas as much as possible.
Okay. All right. And long-term goals?
I think they're probably dynamically responsive to what happens in the region. I can go into that a little bit if you want.
Okay, go. Please go ahead.
I think that if violence continues from Palestinian regions, I think that they'll probably continue to expand into the West Bank. I think they'll probably start annexing territory over there, starting with Area C. If Palestinians and basically the Iranian supporting proxy groups kind of chill and things move in a different direction, then I think you would see Israel move towards some kind of like two-state solution. I would think in one of those directions, but I think it's going to depend on what the Palestinian stuff looks like. That'd be my guess.
Okay. And you are in favor of a two-state solution, correct?
As long as both sides want it, yeah.
As long as both sides want it. We'll explore that in a second. But, well, what do you envision a two-state solution to be?
I mean, ideally, Palestinians have some kind of governing body that runs the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Ideally, you have relatively contiguous territory throughout the West Bank, with probably going to have to be accomplished with some form of land swaps, hopefully a reduction as much as reasonably possible of like enclave settlements in the West Bank territory. I think they had before suggested like a highway that connects the Gaza Strip with the West Bank so that you're able to travel between the two without ever having to cross like Israeli checkpoints. And then probably some sort of like graduated handoff of the security of the West Bank slowly over to the Palestinians. So that would probably involve like 5 years of like radar bases or airspace restriction or something like that as it's like gradually handed over or something similar to the Oslo Accords.
Okay. And would the Palestinians be self-governing?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so when we talk about a two-state solution, are we saying that they control the airspace, they control their borders?
Probably not for a while. I mean, they would have their own government, but there'd probably be heavy restrictions militarily, at least for a while, I'd imagine. That would be like worked towards, that'd be my guess.
Okay. All right. So you're saying there's a transitionary period.
Yeah, but things would like gradually, like different things. Like I imagine like them having a proper army and air force is something that would be far down the line, like a decade or longer. But things like, you know, sole control on the ground of their area in terms of security would probably be something that would happen on a shorter time span. I would ideally, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you think what kind of interim steps do you think might be involved in that? If there's anything in particular that comes to mind. If not, that's fine.
I'm just writing these points down. What do you mean by, like, what would have to happen for us to get to, like, the two-state solution thing?
I guess. Yep. Yeah, actually, let's start with that. Yeah, let's start with that. I actually meant more once peace deals have started, and like because I imagine with a two-state solution, like we start with some sort of peace deal. We'll build out a framework, and then there's steps until like we can take the big actions, right? So the big actions would be like trying to establish like a continuous territory, you know. But before then, might there be like exercises in trust that might happen? But that's just an idea. Yeah.
So are you saying, like, what does the interim period look like between like the signing of the peace deal and before they actually have their country, or?
So there was in one of the peace deals, was the one in the Oslo Accords. There was like a promise that Israel would transfer over
security on the ground, basically, and
a few villages. Yeah, like 3 villages. But then that didn't happen. That was like
I don't know of that. I don't know. I'm not sure what that's referring to. But I know that there is a gradual transfer of security to the Palestinian Authority from 93 onwards. I don't believe any land swaps or any land agreements were made as part of the Oslo Accord. So I'm not sure what the villages mean, unless you just mean like security of those villages or like policing of those villages. That happened gradually over time, yeah?
Yeah, security. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But but there was promises. Basically, I'm saying there was promises broken. And because of that, it made further negotiations difficult.
Gotcha. I'm not aware of promises broken through the Oslo Accords, but can you tell me about those? Or, or maybe it's not what we can get to in a second.
I was just the only point I was asking you if there were interim steps. On
yeah, of course there must be, right? It's not just like it doesn't all happen overnight, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, did you have anything in mind? If not, that's okay. We could just move past this point. It's all right.
I mean, it would be whatever is. It depends on like what gets negotiated. Like if they negotiate like a full 2-state solution with land swaps and everything else, and that's like all on the table, then I imagine the transitionary period is going to have some people moving, some people given money to move. There's probably going to be some sort of fund set up internationally to help Palestinian refugees, because that's always been something that's kind of been talked about on the table. So it's going to be some sort of facilitating of that. There might be some number of Palestinians that are allowed to move back to Israel. I think that was on the table before, up to 100,000, I think, for the 2000 Camp David Accords. That might have been the later Clinton parameters. But it's super going to depend. I mean, an easing of restrictions on stuff moving in and out of Gaza, probably talks with Egypt for also the Gazan border, talks with Saudi Arabia for leadership in the region, talks with I don't know. This could look like a billion different things. I don't know. But I don't think that's too interesting. Yeah.
Okay. No, fair enough. And what's this idea of reparations? Like, any idea what that might look like? Just like a money transfer for those who maybe can't go back to Israel proper?
I think before the talk was an international fund that would be set up to help some Palestinians move back if they needed it.
So just to move back, but like, let's say your house is taken, but that's going to be part of Israel proper. You're not going to get it back. Do you think maybe there would be?
I don't know. It would depend, because technically, a lot of the Arabs that were originally kicked out of their villages were compensated when the land was bought in like the 20s and 30s, the 1900s. I'm not sure. I mean, that could be negotiated. I don't feel strongly one way or another. If Israel wants to do it, I don't even know how much Palestinians care about that in particular. I don't know if either side cares about that much in particular. I guess if they want to, that could be negotiated, but...
I'd imagine people care, but that's okay. Dooby, did you want to ask a question?
Can you guys hear me? Is my...
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm curious, because I think I mostly agree with you on probably 90% of your position on the topic. Especially I was listening to your debate that you had with Prime, and then during that discussion, you seemed to either contradict or maybe give less weight to prior positions I'd heard from you. Because one of the things that I do when I'm not listening to audiobooks is I listen to your stream while I'm working. Right, so I've listened to you go over the history and have discussions with a ton of people about this. So I guess what I'm curious about, just relating to the even the potential for peace talks is, it seemed to be the case that you believe that Netanyahu and the right wing in Israel, the religious right in Israel, have been undermining the peace process for couple of decades now, and today it doesn't seem like they want peace, right? Because they actually do want, because the status quo does benefit them and their interests, right? They're aimed to kind of clear out the Palestinians and to have more of this land come over to Israel. So if that's the case, one thing that I was like really stuck on after that discussion is on the Palestinian side, if they're meant to, sue for peace or meant to protest. How do they do that when the people on the other side of the table don't actually want peace? Right?
Well, I think the people on the other side of the table don't want peace because they don't think the Palestinians want peace.
Right.
Like if you had to rank like all the possible things that could happen, I think that the top thing would be like a two-state solution with peaceful Palestinians and peaceful Israelis. The next step would be a total expulsion of all Palestinians from Palestinian territories and just Israel controlling everything. And then the next thing would be like a one-state solution where the Palestinians are all brought back to Israel and they kick out all the Jews or whatever. That would be like the steps of things people would want. So I think that if there was a push for peace on the Palestinian side, I think that Israel would probably go for it because it would be the easiest outcome of everything. But absent that, they probably would just want to continue to annex territory and kick them out. Yeah.
See, I agree with that. Like, I actually think that both sides, like my kind of perspective on how I think about the people involved, like on the ground, is that you have two groups of people who've grown up in conflict, and they're traumatized and angry, and they're just lashing out at each other nonstop, and the lashing out benefits one side and doesn't benefit the other. That's like if I want to read like real super general, that's kind of how I think about this. So I think it's reasonable for Israelis to want to put people in positions of power that they feel are going to protect them from the threat that's coming from Gaza or from the West Bank or from the Arab nations around them. That's totally reasonable from their perspective. But from the Palestinian perspective, I think it's also reasonable to, separate from, whoever had legitimate claim to the land or whatever the peace deals were or who undermined them. I think from their perspective, it's reasonable for them to feel like they're being oppressed. They have these racist, ethnocentric Jews on the other side of this wall that hate them, that are oppressing them, that are humiliating them and their families for decades. So I think it's reasonable for both sides to be fucking like enraged at each other, right? And I wonder, like, if there is ever going to be the possibility of peace, I don't know how we get there without one. Yeah, Hamas, I think I agree with you, does need to be dismantled. Its ability to wage any kind of war needs to be taken apart. But I also think that even if that were to happen, it seems like because of the history of aggression from Palestinians, it seems to justify further oppression, quote unquote, further brutality from the far right in Israel. Which I think is obviously going to lead to more aggression from the Palestinians, right? It's like a never-ending cycle of violence. So it seems like both sides need to kind of lay down their arms. I agree with you that right now it's reasonable for Israel to want to dismantle Hamas, but I also think that long-term, given that they've killed tens of thousands of people already, long-term, it doesn't seem like the current strategy is one realistic or helpful to them long-term.
Not to be mean, get ready to clip me, commies and socialists. One side is clearly better here. So out of area that has relatively no natural resources, you have Israel, which is a thriving country that has, blossomed in this area despite all the conflict on the sides of them. These guys are huge exporters of intelligence, of technology. They have a government that is pretty well functioning. They do democracy pretty well. They have good relationships with people all over the world. That's a comparison to that to whatever you say exists in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. These are not the same. These two things are not the same. To say that there's like equal conflict coming from both, or there's like an equal, obsession with violence on both sides or whatever is just not true. I think right now, there needs to be way more onus on the Palestinian people, or at least surrounding supporters of the Palestinian people, to either push towards peace, stop supporting violence, and to pressure some kind of actual negotiated two-state solutions instead of like the continuous obsession with trying to win the war in Israel that's never going to be won.
Yeah, I don't want you to misunderstand me. Right? I'm not saying that they're like equal in terms of like culture, or they're equal in terms of like mindset. I think that from a Western perspective, from an American perspective, because I'm an American, I think that clearly the culture in Israel is better. I think it's still pretty bad. I don't agree with a lot of the ethnocentric shit. I think that the way that their religion is has been melded into their government at many levels. I think these are bad things. But still much better than what happens in Gaza. Much better than the belief systems in the West Bank. Much better than the belief systems across a lot of the Muslim world. Right. I'm way more Islamophobic than you are. Right? So I agree with that. So I'm not saying, culturally these two people are like equal or something. What I'm saying is that the grievances are legitimate on both sides from their perspectives, and I don't think that most of these people have time to sit around and read over the history and figure out whether or not their grievances were legal or not legal, or who did what. I think, like I said earlier, the reality is these people have grown up in a conflict, and all they know is their side of that story. So to me, it seems like you need other powers to take responsibility for the conflict, for not just the role in perpetuating the conflict, but the role in ending the conflict. If they don't want Israel to carry out an ethnic cleansing, they need to give Israel support so they don't need to carry out an ethnic cleansing, right? Because I think at some point it's reasonable for the Israeli population to say these people are fucking crazy, we need to get rid of them, right? I can understand that perspective.
Sure. I don't necessarily disagree, but I think the leadership needs to come from like fellow Arab states then. Like I like the Saudi Arabian suggestion. I couldn't tell if this was real or not, or if it was just like talks and it didn't happen, but like a Saudi-led government taking over the West Bank basically. And something has to be done with Iran obviously supporting proxy groups to fight with Israel. But if these two things aren't happening, and if the Palestinians are still being increasingly radicalized every single day, like Israel's not going to be the one to do anything.
Yeah, and they, from their perspective, they have no reason to. There's no reason for them to lay down arms, right? If they're still getting bombed and whatever the fuck. So there was a story that I saw a few days ago, right, about Bibi was talking about not annexing Gaza, but occupying Gaza. Right, and based on the history of what happens in the occupied territories, to me that seems like a massive step backwards. Right, so I'd agree with you. If Saudi were to come in and do this instead, I think that would be much better to keep the situation stable. And given that Bibi and the Israeli right wing have only grown in power over the last a couple decades, it seems to me that there's no reason to believe that that they wouldn't do the sort of thing there that they're doing in the West Bank, right? Which is also undermining stability, also detrimental to any kind of peace process. So when I say that the rest of the world should get involved, I agree. The Arab states need to do this, but I also think that the United States needs to do this. I think the UN needs to stop their empty platitudes and actually get off their fucking ass and try to make something happen on the ground. But the issue that I have with the way that you present this sometimes, and it makes me wonder if you're like trolling. Like when you were speaking of Prime, I thought you might be trolling him or something, because the way that you're presenting yourself is very, very pro-Israel. But I don't actually think you're as pro-Israel as you seem to express that you are, because I think your solutions are much more reasonable than the Israeli solutions right now. Right? Maybe 20 years ago they would agree with you, but it seems like right now their goal is long term to occupy the area. You've had multiple Israeli officials. There's nothing on paper yet. But you have multiple Israeli officials coming forward and saying that they want to offer them like living upgrades, and what that means is they encourage them to emigrate from the country, go somewhere else. So it's like this is a much worse solution, I think, than anything you've put forward.
Sure, yeah, they just got massively terrorist attacked. They probably want to expel all of the Palestinians, at least from the Gaza Strip, if not the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Yeah, that's not surprising at all.
Yeah,
that's why I said that I think the Israeli, because Israel is a democracy, I think Israel is responsive dynamically to or responsive to the dynamics in the region. If Palestinian attacks and terrorists and all that shit or whatever continue, then I think the people are continuing to be pushed to the right and continue to be more extreme when they consider Palestinians' future in the lands occupied. But if, Palestinians be peaceful and start actually doing stuff besides just fighting with Israel all day, I think that those attitudes would probably change over time. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I agree with you. But one thing that
to be clear, there's no world right now with Hezbollah, with the Houthis, and with Hamas. Right. There is no world where Israel takes the first steps to peace. That's just never happening. To even give air to that is to engage in a form of like mutual masturbation that only serves to increase the puddle of cum on the floor and does absolutely nothing towards moving us towards any realistic solution. Israel is never making the first steps towards peace in this area instance ever. Do either of you disagree with that?
It depends. If you mean the first steps toward peace equals like stopping the current like campaign, having like a ceasefire,
ceasefire,
then
or
yeah,
moving
I
towards it,
disagree.
or enduring terrorist attacks, or trying to do whatever. Like the first steps towards peace are never coming from Israel. They probably shouldn't. There's just no reason for it. It's never happening. It has to come on the
Wait,
Palestinian/Arab side, I think.
do you think that the current like stated like a goal of Israel, which is to like destroy Hamas, right? Remove Hamas. Do you think that's a reasonable? I think it is reasonable. Do you think it's achievable? One, and if it is achievable, is it worth it given the potential for like civilian loss and what that would do to their interests?
Yeah.
Oh, so you do think okay? So maybe the issue is that when I listened to you previously, you thought it wasn't reasonable because I think you said that if they were to go over like 40,000 in
I'm saying that the
civilian
international
casualties.
community probably won't endure like tens and tens and tens of thousands of deaths. There's going to be some number where people are going to cut it off at, but this number's held like pretty
Yeah.
consistent over the past, well, I think like month, in terms of like it
No.
hasn't. What?
No, the numbers. Hold on. Did you say the numbers increase?
I thought the
sorry,
numbers have been
how
pretty consistent, haven't they? Like it feels like we passed
No,
like
they've
20,000.
We're talking about deaths, or we're talking about poll numbers. What are we
Deaths.
talking about? Deaths.
I
Yeah,
feel like we
they've been
passed like
rising.
my understanding is they've
20,000.
increased by like.
I thought we.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I thought we passed like 20,000 like a month ago, and it feels like we've. I don't think I've heard anything about 30,000 yet. I feel like we've been like. I feel like there was a huge ramp up of deaths in like the first like month or even a few weeks, and then it feels like it's been like kind of like leveled off. I don't know.
Yeah, well, part of the problem is that all of the institutions that would keep track of that are degraded, right? Like, so even just reporting on the numbers, there have been an incredible amount of deaths of reporters themselves and individual reporters, but the agencies that would actually do this have been degraded. So there are some updated numbers that are coming out, but it's trickling out. And then whether the accuracy of those numbers are, in question. Not that like they're overstated, but that they're understated. So the last I saw was around 25,000 deaths. But yeah,
26,000, I believe. Yeah, I don't believe that. I don't believe that the institutions have been so degraded that the deaths are still continuing at the same pace and they just aren't being reported on. I don't believe that's the case. And I haven't heard anybody say that's the case. I'm sure there are more dead than we actually know, especially as people are pulled from the rubble or whatever. So the actual numbers might be higher, but I'm pretty sure the amount of like deaths is actually like tapered off quite significantly after the first like few weeks of the war. Because I feel like we hit that 20,000 figure pretty fast. And then it's been, I think we're at like 26,000 now today.
I'm sure. No, okay. I'm sure there's an arc to the number of deaths, like 100%. But I'm saying that part of the issue with specifically reporting numbers is just that they have less capability. I mean, you would agree
No,
that
I wouldn't.
governmental
I don't think that's
functions,
true.
whatever you would agree that governmental functions, whatever they might have been reduced in this period, right? When they're being
To
bombed.
include deaths? I haven't heard that at all. No, I haven't seen that said at all.
Why would that deaths be anything special when hospitals are barely running? Like, why would that be? Why would they have specifically the power to reduce deaths and that never be degraded while bombs are falling on them? But other governmental
I'm pretty sure the
facilities-
bombing campaign is like significantly slowed, hasn't it? And I don't think all the hospitals have been destroyed and people can still report like missing and dead. I don't think Hamas would slow down on that. It doesn't serve their, media aims at all to stop reporting. I think they'd probably just start like guessing or extrapolating. I'm pretty sure it's just the actual like combat operations have slowed down, at least from the air, since the ground forces have actually rolled in.
Okay. I'm not asking whether, and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to harp on this point for long because this is not extremely important.
Okay.
But it's not whether Hamas doesn't find advantage in reporting the numbers. They do. I would agree, right? I'm just saying that it's reasonable to assume that the ability to count, the ability to report, the ability to do anything has been degraded with a constant bombing campaign that's wiped out a certain number of incredibly high percentage of buildings, like in northern Gaza and then southern Gaza, with the situation deteriorating the way it is, with 1 million people starving, that would be a problem. But okay, I mean, all right. Fair enough.
I mean, if you have any articles that show that like the ability to track deaths has deteriorated or something, I'd be interested in seeing that. If it's so obvious and it's so common sense, I'm sure there should be somebody reporting on that, but I haven't seen those reports at all, so I have no reason to believe that to be the case. I also have no reason to believe it to be the case that if those numbers were increasing and Hamas couldn't keep track of it, I think Hamas would just fabricate it like they did the bombing of the hospital and reporting that Israel did that. So yeah, I don't think that. I think that it's just that after the airstrikes happen and the ground invasion has begun, I think that you're going to see less deaths because you don't have as much aerial strikes. That's my guess. And I think that's what's happened so far, factually, in terms of there being less aerial strikes and a ground invasion happening. So yeah,
I don't. I think I don't have this in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that isn't true. That the aerostrikes have like slowed. I think. I don't want to make a firm claim on it, but I'm pretty sure they're still consistently dropping a shit ton of bombs in the area. Right? Maybe less than the immediate start of the war, but there's still consistent bombing happening. And I'd agree with you that it makes sense for there to be like a roller coaster, right? So at the start, there's going to be a massive wave of deaths because you have civilians still in the area, but as they kind of clear out and go to the safe zones that Israel laid out for them, there's going to be a decrease, right, in the amount of people being hit by those bombs.
Sure. So here's this is a source. I don't know how accurate this is, but it says that they're sourcing the Gaza Health Ministry, so assuming they're not making up their charts, it seems to be that there's a pretty linear fall off in terms of number of deaths. It seems like in the early days, some of these reported numbers a day were quite high, 700 plus on 2 days, 500 almost on other days, and it seems like that's mostly come down now to around 1 to 250 a day, about. So it seems like it's decreased quite a bit. And then supposedly, at least according to the IDF, about 1/3 of these are soldiers as well. So given that it's urban combat, I mean, yeah, I think it's probably about, I don't know what else to say about it.
Do you think, so do you think that, so I think, but again, I think the number that you gave is like 40,000.
Number 40,000 for what?
Yeah, I think you said that if they were to go over like 40,000 deaths, and I think it was like specifically civilian deaths, right?
Okay.
That you think that, and obviously that's just like a.
I'm just like guessing. Like
yeah, it's just like a guess, right? So yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. There's gonna be some number where people are like, it's too much.
Yeah. But and I agree with that. I don't think these being silly about the specific number really matters. I think it's going to be the death toll, but also the civilian suffering, right? So I think that there's been reports that that there's like a famine happening or some shit, that these people are like close to starvation, or some of them are in starvation. And I wonder, like, if that continues for the next month or so, don't you think that, do you agree that the international community, right? So the people who would have been mad about the 40,000 deaths, they would still be upset about this, obviously, right? About people being wounded, life-changing injuries, people starving, children in the streets, all the sad pictures you see on the fucking internet. Right, so it's not just the deaths that affects the international community or their opinions.
Sure. Yeah, it can be famine and other conditions for civilians as well. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, how long do you think, if Israel's stated goal is to just wipe out Hamas, well, what they mean by this isn't just the infrastructure, it's not just the tunnels, but it's like every fucking Hamas member, right?
Not every Hamas member, but like a significant amount of them, right? Supposedly 20 to 30% of Hamas fighters have been killed. I don't know what that number needs to be to effectively kneecap the organization and remove them from power.
Right.
I don't know if Netanyahu or anybody has stated the number of fighters that needs to be killed for them to feel like they've done that, but...
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, I guess, is given that they haven't stated what the exact numbers or what the exact parameters of victory are right now. Don't you think that there should be pressure from the United States, from the international community, to get them to either lay out that number, lay out exactly what they're looking for? It's not just destruction of Hamas, but what exactly specifically are you trying to achieve? And when that happens, if it's true that they want to say, hey, we want to wipe out every Hamas member, every Hamas installation, is there a point at which this becomes so detrimental to the population there, so damaging to the population there, and to the civilian infrastructure there, that it's just not worth it, and we should encourage Israel to stop?
Probably not. I'm not necessarily. I don't think so. No. There's going to be a question about how much you can help international, or what they should be concerned with for international support. Israel should balance that and weigh that carefully. Right. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is Hamas's fault. As long as they hide amongst civilians, they conduct operations amongst civilians. The responsibility is on Hamas, not Israel. I don't know why the responsibility is on the the person responding to a terrorist attack rather than the terrorist entity that is controlling the country. The responsibility at the end of the day is on Israel, or I'm sorry, is on Hamas. I think Israel needs to do a better job at like trying to win the information war or doing better in terms of marketing, because it seems like they suck at that. But yeah, like at the end of the day, all of the ire, like the civilian situation is tragic and something needs to be done about it. And Hamas should do something about it, but they haven't. They're not giving back any hostages. They want to continue the fight. Hamas wants as many civilian casualties as possible. So it benefits them. And
yeah, I agree. I mean, it seems like from the Hamas perspective, or the just like anti-Israeli perspective, more civilians deaths is better because it makes people more angry at Israel, right? So they don't seem to give a fuck. So this is why I agree with you that obviously this whatever happens here, it doesn't seem like this organization can be around, right? If they need to be dismantled, whatever the fuck that means. But I think the issue that I have is I agreed with you when you said that after a certain point of civilian deaths, it would be unrealistic, or I forgot the word you used. Maybe like unreasonable for Israel to pursue this, and they need to stop, because long term, what this is going to do to the relations in the region, and what it's going to do on the ground in terms of generating, if not Hamas, some other group or some other just random ass terrorist attacks from people who are angry that their families have been killed. Even if their family was a Hamas member, right? If you kill a Hamas member, that dude still has family who can be upset, and this could lead to more terrorism and more attacks. Even not attached to an organization.
No, I reject this view. I don't think that the idea that we need to love the terrorists and be super ultra fucking careful with an enemy that if they had the opportunity to would launch a full-scale genocidal and actual genocidal invasion of Israel. I don't like the hand-holding. I think that it needs to be dealt with incredibly firmly. I think that, and I think the surrounding Arab leadership even agrees, Hamas needs to be ripped out root and stem and destroyed at almost whatever cost. The civilian casualties and deaths that occur as a result of that suck, but it's Hamas's fault. And they are the ones who the blame should be laid squarely at the feet of. That has to stop. That has to stop.
I agree that it has to stop, but I don't think that I don't know how this makes sense to you. So if them stopping and no hand holding equals they kill every single Hamas member, anybody who's ever been affiliated with Hamas, which seems to be what Israel's goal is right now, so far as I know. If that's what that means. I agree. There's reasons for them to do this. I agree that they are justified in thinking this way, but as like from the outside perspective, it seems like what this is going to do, not just to the people there, but to the region, seems like it's not worth it. Right? At some point, you can't kill every single ISIS member. You need to accept that ISIS is defeated, even though they're ex-ISIS.
Like I said, there's probably
going
to be some like percentage of Hamas they're looking to eliminate. I don't know what that percentage is.
Right.
I don't know if they have that in mind or what that looks like, or if they're just planning on sweeping basically all of North and South Gaza and then they're going to leave after that. I don't know, but
okay. So sweeping North and South Gaza and then leaving. So it seems like I think Bibi said that his goal is to occupy the area, right? He doesn't want Gaza to have sovereignty
indefinitely.
No, I don't think indefinitely. I'm not aware of him saying indefinitely. I just said that.
They occupy the area right now, don't they?
Well, sort of. Yeah.
So,
no, but I think.
I'm not sure this counts
no,
as
but
an
I think.
occupation, but okay.
Yeah, I think
they have like tanks and military
word,
personnel and airstrikes that has like all of Gaza like under its thumb right now. I feel like they're kind of occupied right now.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
But you can define. Oh, it's fine. You can go ahead, TV.
Yeah. So again. So my understanding is that he's not just saying that they're going to park the military there. He's talking about like an occupation, and it seemed, based on the wording that I saw, it seems something similar to what's happening in parts of the West Bank, right? Some kind of military occupation, long term to settle the region, to make sure that Hamas doesn't pop up again, to make sure other groups don't pop up again. Which again, from their perspective, totally reasonable. Mm-hmm. But I think you said in your discussion, I think you're on some loner box panel, where I think you said that you think this would be like a back step, right? This would be a step backwards, and it would actually cause further. You think it would actually cause further turmoil, conflict, etc., because the people there are not gonna accept this.
If they had like security checkpoints and everything set up like inside the Gaza Strip, it would probably make people feel worse, I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah,
and I think I agree with you. This would obviously, I think, inevitably cause further attacks, which would lead to further justification for Israel to attack Gaza. and again, the cycle of violence has continued, right?
Okay. They're already violent.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
Hamas already wants to do as much violence as possible to Israel. I don't know why the onus would be on Israel here to do different. Like, Hamas already wants to destroy, the people in Gaza already want to destroy all of Israel. So I don't, like, it's just so strange that it's like you've got this rabid dog that's like trying to bite and kill everything around it, and you're like, okay, well, be careful. Like, if you act mean, he's going to bite you too. Like, Hamas already is committed to the destruction of all of Israel, and a lot of the people in the Gaza Strip are committed to the destruction of all of Israel. So this like super like handholdy, like, use gloves to be very careful so the people don't like not like you, I don't think that makes any sense. I just don't understand that analysis. They already want to kill all of them. Like, Israel's priority right now, as it probably should be, is Israel's security. That's probably first and foremost something they care about after the elimination of Hamas. And if they feel like that checkpoints or whatever the fuck, or some kind of like short to midterm occupation of the Gaza Strip is the way to affect that, then that's probably what they're going to go for, I would imagine.
Okay, but it seems, again, there's nothing like written yet, but it seems like it is the occupation. But based on what multiple like officials have said, it seems like long term there is a strategy that they're discussing to like get these people to emigrate, to move to other nations, right? To offer them like living upgrades or whatever in other countries, and to encourage other countries to take them as refugees, which again is reasonable. I imagine many of these people would want to do that, but again, from the Palestinian perspective, as this rabid dog, right, who's been beat down, if the Israelis are coming in and offering you the opportunity, quote unquote, to leave your home and go somewhere else while militarily occupying the area, it seems like this is not an ethnic cleansing, if that's exactly how it happens, but somewhere close to an ethnic cleansing. And from their perspective, I don't understand why they would accept this. And I understand that, fuck them, because they started it. I get that. But I'm talking about like a situation in which Hamas has been dismantled. The Israeli military objective has been achieved. Now they have this area where Hamas is dismantled. There's no Hamas infrastructure, or very little Hamas infrastructure. Now they're occupying this area. So going forward, it seems like their current plan would just inflame tensions again.
Well, their worry would probably be like another organization like that coming up, or there's being a security threat, right?
Yeah, and this is why I agree with you. Like Saudi Arabia coming in and getting involved, and maybe them occupying the area and taking over like security of the area, that makes a lot more sense. But it doesn't seem like there's any pressure for them to do this. It doesn't seem like there's any pressure from the U.S. for Israel to. There is pressure. I shouldn't say that. There is pressure from the U.S. for them to stop the bombing campaign. But I think there's pressure, and I think there's pressure for them to like not occupy the area. But it doesn't seem like the pressure is doing anything. So I guess what I'm going to ask you is, so if Israel achieves this objective, wipes out Hamas, whatever the fuck that means to them, now you have this population that is not militarized anymore. There's no Hamas infrastructure, and they come in and they want to occupy the area. Do you think that if they started imposing things like they have in the West Bank, this military occupation, they started building settlements there, moving in settlers, like they do in the West Bank.
I don't think they'd bring settlements back. That would be a big mistake, I would imagine. If they did, I think that'd be a huge step backwards. As far as running security checkpoints, I don't know. If they want to do it, if they feel like they need to, it would depend on their justification for it. But I don't know what their rationale is for that right now. Yeah. Yeah,
I guess what I'm trying to like suss out is what this looks like after the war. Right after it's an ongoing war. After the current conflict, so you have this region where I think like something like 70 or 80% of the residential infrastructure has been destroyed, quote unquote. We don't know if that number is real, obviously, but a lot of houses, apartment blocks, etc., have been destroyed. So you're gonna have a lot of people in the streets, probably in tent cities for a long time.
Okay.
Like, I'm wondering is
figure their shit out. I don't know. They need to just
figure their shit out.
I mean, they're the highest recipients of aid per capita in the entire world, of which the United States is the leading contributor to. There's money there to do their shit if they wanted to. They just have to like build, schools instead of rockets, or fuel their hospitals instead of their, missiles that they want to shoot into fucking Israel. Like, the money is there for it to do it. Right now, what's not there is the will of the people to do it, or the support from the surrounding people to do it. And I mean, as long as if that never changes, I don't know. Is it Israel's responsibility to infuse that will with them? I don't know. I have very little sympathy. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
So, okay, so many things here. But I got it. I'll go back to one thing just to quickly get it out of the way about the Israel numbers. I actually couldn't let that go. The death toll. Yeah. So I just found an easy like an easy Google search away. This at the stage. Here we go. Right. Okay. So how are Gaza casualty updates affected by Israel attacks on hospitals? All right. Ministry of Health in Gaza has been struggling to update casualty figures in Israel as Israeli forces have increasingly targeted hospitals and allied services in besieged enclave. The United States has confirmed that the collapse of services and communications at hospitals in northern Gaza is seriously hampering health officials. So it goes down to when they got the last update. Due to the targeting of hospitals and prevention of entry of any of the bodies or wounded, the Ministry of Health was unable on Saturday to issue accurate statistics for the numbers of dead and injured during the past hours. Yeah, so they've been having trouble. I don't know. There's just
What is the date of this article?
Oh, the date of this article, November. This is November.
November 12th. So it seems like they've been reporting numbers pretty well since then. So I don't know. I don't buy into that much. This is over 2 months old.
You don't. Okay.
Well, there are fewer hospitals now, right? So if they're attacking the hospitals,
you don't need a hospital to report a person as like dead or missing, right?
This seems to be the pathway that they were using, though, right? Like through the hospital, like that was the mechanism they were using. So, I mean, I don't know why.
So I'm reading this article. It just says that they missed a day in reporting that there was a gap. On Sunday, the government media office in Gaza updated the casualty figure. After a gap of 2 days, it raised the death toll to 11,000, including more than 8,000 children and women. Due to the targeting of hospitals and the prevention of entry of any of the bodies or wounded, the Ministry of Health was unable on Saturday to issue accurate statistics for the number of dead and injured during the past hours. Yeah, I mean, this was 2 months ago. It seems like they've been reporting it since then, but I don't know. Maybe a ton are missing. I'm not sure. I just haven't heard anybody say that. This article's 2 months old. I guess
something to consider is, if I remember correctly, I think that most of the hospitals in Gaza are now like considered to be like non-functional, right?
I don't know. I don't know if they were ever considered functional. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
I think that they're considered to be non-functional, whatever the fuck that means in this context, right? So if this hospital having issues functioning led to a decrease in their ability to report deaths, if there are almost no hospitals functioning or just a handful of hospitals functioning now, I mean, it does make sense to think that their ability to report numbers or to keep track of numbers would be diminished.
Yeah,
right?
I'm just very cautious with that language. It makes sense or whatever. Maybe it could, but then I should be able to find like somebody reporting on that. Should be pretty easy to find.
We literally just did.
You gave me a 2-month-old article. Numbers have been updated and reported since then.
I didn't. Hold on. Destiny, don't move the goalpost here. So the thing that I was responding to was whether or the thing I originally claimed was that the ability to report numbers has been decreasing, right? That they have a lowered ability to do that. And I presented, hey, they've been bombed, right? Their institutions have been falling apart. Not that they can't do it at all. Right? Not that we don't get any numbers, period, but that the ability to actually report the total number has been reduced. So I gave you an article. I showed you an article immediately that shows that actually that has happened. Their ability to gather that data has been reduced. And now you're pretending like the discussion was about whether they could do it at all. That wasn't the case. So we can just leave it at that.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait. Gotcha. Okay. Sorry, I just finished reading this whole article. Okay. Nothing in this article says that they have had... Can you point me in this article where it says that they have difficulty getting accurate information, they can't report the numbers? Can you show me in this article where it says that? I just read it. I don't see it anywhere. I saw that there was a day gap where the communications were hampered. I don't see anything in here where they claim that, but maybe I missed it, where they claim that they're unable to ascertain the amount dead. Just point me in the article where it says it, where that ability has been hampered.
Hold on. Let's not change this, okay? The point of this is of this particular issue that I'm raising is that it's completely reasonable to believe that they'd have trouble performing this service, right? So I give you an article showing that they're having trouble performing this service, not that there is no updates. I don't
disagree with you that it's reasonable to assume that. That if somebody told me that, oh, in
I'm not-
times of war,
I'm
it's
not
hard, I'd be like,
assuming
oh,
it.
okay, sure, that's it
Yeah.
could be. But then if it
Great, 'cause
was
I'm
the
not
case,
assuming it, 'cause we can.
well, if it was the case that was happening, though, that we should assume the numbers are far higher because of the inability to count the dead. The only thing I've ever heard that in regards to are like, for instance, like people buried under rubble. But the idea that like all of these deaths aren't being reported that are happening, that it should be easily reportable, I've never seen that substantiated before. I've never heard that. It makes sense that would be the case. I've just never seen anybody write about it, so I assume it's probably not happening. And the fact that the only article you can read was from 2 months ago in the middle of November, and the fact that we've gotten 20,000 or whatever deaths updated since then, or 10,000 since then, and the fact that even in this article, it doesn't say that they can't count or report the number of deaths. It just said they had a day gap in reporting. It didn't say that they didn't
Great.
count deaths that day or they missed it that day. It
I
just
never said they couldn't count. Great, so we agree.
Oh wait, so
I
then
never
what?
said they
Oh, so then
couldn't
what is
count.
the issue? The issue is just that sometimes they might be delayed in giving an update.
Yeah, that might
All right,
take
yeah, I believe
time.
that.
That
Okay, cool. We agree then, 100%.
Yeah, okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
To be clear, that wasn't your
All right.
original claim. Your original claim was that they were
That was
missing a
actually
whole
my
bunch of
original
deaths. Not that they just had delays in communicating it sometimes, but
Well, no, missing a bunch of deaths is not that like those deaths disappear. That there was a period in
yes,
time.
that was
which you
your
could
initial
count-
claim that there were like 10,000 additional dead people that they just couldn't get to the hospital. So
Hold
they
on,
were all
hold on,
blown up or
Des,
whatever.
hold on. Pull it back, Stephen. Right.
Uh-huh.
It's not that those deaths. Let's say there are 5,000 deaths out there that haven't been reported. Right. It's not that you can't count those deaths later. So if there is a slowdown in reporting, it's not like those deaths aren't going to come in eventually. I'm just saying that the ability to report these numbers might be degraded. So it could be the fact that 5,000 people have died in the last month, but we won't find out until another month. So to say that we haven't hit like your magic 40,000 number, we don't know. We don't know. It could simply be the fact that their ability to gather that data and to report that data is being delayed. Simple enough.
Okay, if that's your position, fine. I'm okay with that.
Okay, thank you. All right. So moving on past that one, I'd like to jump on what you and Dooby were discussing. You talked about the onus not being on Israel to handhold the Palestinians or the Gazans, right? That this conflict they should be able to do as they wish. Is that your position, that they should be able to use whatever level of violence?
I think
that they
Israel
deem
should
appropriate?
continue to conduct itself in accordance with international guidelines for conducting war, but I think that they should continue to be as aggressive as they feel is necessary to effect their military outcome, which was the eradication of Hamas.
If let's just pretend that's not what happened today, but let's just pretend the ICJ reported that Israel's actions were genocidal, right? It didn't happen today, but let's say it did. You would say then they are out of step of international law, and so they should adjust themselves.
If they're genocidal or committing genocide, yeah, I think genocide should probably stop. I would have to see the rationale or the justification, though, because it feels like for a lot of international communities reporting on Israel, it gets a little bit wacky sometimes. But I would have to see. But I mean, assuming factually they were, although that's hard to imagine. But if they were acting outside of the bounds of like conducting reasonable warfare or something, then yeah, I would say that they should probably conduct themselves within the boundaries of reasonable warfare. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the reason I'm asking this is to establish that you don't think that Israel is should be allowed to use an infinite amount of violence against like the Gazans, right? That at some point,
no, it has to be within your targeting. Everything has to be within, hopefully within guidelines of assessing collateral damage and everything. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And do you have any idea what those guidelines might be? What are reasonable guidelines?
Sure. In regards to what?
Into like the number of deaths per.
There is no guidelines into the number of deaths. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
If you want to talk about
that's
targeting guidelines, if you want to talk about like what counts as like a targetable thing in war, if you want to talk about how you assess collateral or anything like that, we can talk about that. But there is no guideline about number of deaths. That's just a media talking point that is meaningless.
Civilian deaths versus military targets. So you're saying that there are no guidelines, and so it wouldn't matter necessarily. If there's no guidelines here, then there would be nothing to hold them back, right? That you could just.
I mean, it depends on what we're talking about. If you give me a particular example, we can talk through it. The guidelines are when you're targeting something, you have to assess whether or not there's military personnel there. If there is, it's a military target. And then while you're doing your assessment for fighting or for attacking that target, you've got to assess how much collateral damage will there be to non-military things, so like civilians, or civilian infrastructure, and then you've got to weigh that against the overall effect on the war outcome that you're trying to achieve. And as long as you feel like the collateral damage is less than the detrimental effect to your overall war effort, then you make the strike, basically, is how these individual assessments are done.
Okay, so if there are 10 Hamas members hiding in the basement of an apartment building of several hundred, and for whatever reason, those several hundred haven't evacuated or been slowed to evacuate, and then you drop a bomb on that building, like what would you, and obviously this is a hypothetical I'm putting together for you, but like would you think that'd be worth it? Like
Israel would have to assess is if they were to do another means.
I'm asking you. Like
the assessment would be, what you would do is you would assess, okay, well, there are 10 Hamas fighters here, there are 200 or 300 civilians. If we send in our soldiers, what do we feel like the damage is going to look like to us? How does that affect our overall war effort? If it's worse than the death of those 200 people, then we bomb the apartment building. If we feel like we could go in and kill, those Hamas fighters and lose nobody, then it'd probably be better to do that. If we feel like we would lose, 10 or 20 soldiers, and we feel like losing soldiers is going to be ultra harmful to our overall war effort because dead IDF soldiers make, an enraged population, et cetera, then you probably bomb the apartment building and you deal with the 100 or 200 collateral deaths for the civilians.
So, okay, so you're saying that they can. So there is this internal calculation, but how does the outside world? How do you think us as the international community should be able to judge that? So,
well, if you're smart and you understand rules of warfare and how international law does in assessing military targets and collateral damage, and you'd say, okay, well, as long as we feel like they're making these calculations adequately, then it's probably okay. If you just go by numbers, then you're probably going to be ass-paying because you don't understand how any military conflict in urban areas is conducted, or how civilian versus military targets are assessed, or how collateral damage is assessed.
Or you could just disagree with their calculus, right? You could just say, oh, yeah, well, yeah,
hard
they
to
fire
disagree with the calculus,
but I don't think it's worth 300 deaths.
We don't have the decision making inside, which sucks. I feel like maybe there should be more transparency there. I don't know how that works necessarily, but yeah.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be, who do you think is a fair arbiter of that? Like, so.
Well, thus far historically, it's the country conducting the warfare.
No. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I mean, like, as a third party. So, like, us, laymen, right? All we have are reports. And that's the best we can do. We can just make our judgments there. But it's fair to say that other governments have a deeper analysis, and they have military experts there. Who do you think is an accurate, can accurately assess? Do you think the U.S. or the UN or anything?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I guess if you take a holistic view of it, you look at the number of civilian deaths or casualties compared to the number of military deaths or casualties. I mean, you get reports on individual attacks and you see if things looked or not. I mean, that's all you can kind of do is go by third-party external reporting, I imagine, because Israel probably doesn't share its target considerations in its strike cells with, the United States even probably. But I mean, all you can kind of do is like analyze from an outsider perspective, right?
I understand, and I'm asking you, who do you think would be an accurate? Cause I would imagine you would say Iran would be a great clearinghouse for this information. So, who would you trust? From the outside?
It would depend on the analysis. I'm not sure.
It depends on the analysis. So, if the analysis is against Israel, you say you don't trust it, or
that's what I said. Yes.
No, I think it means what they're analyzing,
rationale,
and how
the analysis,
what they're analyzing and how they're incentivized to maybe skew things one way or the other, right? So you may have like multiple organizations looking at this. Would make more sense.
Yeah.
So I'm asking you, who right now are you looking at? Who do you trust to do that? Right, like who's giving you reports that you trust that says that the IDF is acting within reasonable guidelines, whatever those might be.
Well, I don't know. I just kind of look at, I guess, right now the big trust is in Israel to be accurately reporting number of fighters killed. because I think if that number is accurate, then it's like 1 to 3 fighters versus civilian casualties. And I think historically, when you look at urban warfare, I think that ratio is pretty good in dense urban environments, is what I've heard, but I haven't followed ultra much on that. But I mean, like, there's so much visibility into this war in terms of like numbers being reported every single day that I think you can probably just read reports and read stories and look at the numbers of reported dead, captured, civilians versus combatants, and kind of like draw a rough conclusion on your own. But unless something leaks or there's like some attack that's like egregiously horrible, it's hard to. I don't know. I just don't know if I put much value or anything. Yeah.
So hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. So my question is, like, I feel like I'm being pretty straightforward, but maybe I'm being unclear, right? Like, you have stated that us as laymen, right, had difficulty making these assessments.
Not at all. I think laymen can make the assessments pretty well. I think that because they're politically partisan and driven, they don't want to make the assessments. So people will just look at something like number of civilian deaths and then soy the fuck out. But I think civilians right now have a ton of information available to them. You've got tons of OSINT people posting on Twitter. You've got tons of international statements made by, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, all these other people. You've got governments that are making statements. I think there's tons of information for a civilian to have like a reasonably okay conclusion about it. But most people just don't have the desire to. They just like soy out over like 1 or 2 figures. Like that 70% of like housing has been destroyed, even though that's not true. Or the number of 1 million people about to starve to death, even though that's not true, or the whatever, just like politicized numbers like that, basically. But I think there's a lot of like public information available. You can probably draw some rough inferences if you wanted to.
Okay, so I'm asking, are there official sources rather than?
Can you give me? Okay, how about you provide a positive argument and you give me an example and I'll criticize it. I don't, because you're saying official sources, like I don't know what that means. Like that the United States would say, just so you know, guys, from day one, every single Israeli strike has been conducted in accordance with accurate proportionality and collateral assessment. Like I don't know if the United States or any other international source would ever make a statement like that. I don't think Israel makes statements like that. So I don't know what you're asking me. What kind of example you're asking me for?
Well, so like the United States is backing Israel's play, right? Like there's some level of pushback, but clearly not enough to make any significant policy change, right? So, and the United States has a history of being a strong ally for Israel. So I think looking at that, you can make an assessment that maybe the United States isn't the best clearinghouse for this information, right? Then you can look at international sources. So maybe the UN, maybe Amnesty International, like you mentioned. Like they can put out reports and say that that Israel is acting outside of those guidelines TM, right? And I'm asking, like, would those sources make more sense to you? Like, if could I present a source to you that says that the IDF is acting outside of boundaries? Or would you just tell me, well, this source can't be trusted, right? Because
I don't think any source necessarily can't be trusted. You just have to understand like what they're like reporting on. I think that saying something can't be trusted is pretty broad. I might make a statement like that depending on how quick the argument is. But like I would say broadly speaking that I don't know if I always trust the overall conclusions of like Amnesty International or the Human Rights Council. I don't know if I trust their conclusions. But like I don't think they make stuff up. When you look at the details of how they actually did the reporting, it seems like they do a lot of the on the ground information gathering, and then they try to assess like civilian deaths in certain strikes or whatever, and that information seems accurate, but they're leaving out like Israel's side of the story or the proportionality or collateral damage assessment. So I was like, okay, well the conclusions are done, but like I don't think they're making shit up. So I don't know if I would ever say like, oh, this is like an untrustworthy source. I would just say like, careful from the conclusions. You can look at the reports if you want, and you can get information that way, but like I'd be hesitant to just like believe the conclusions, I guess. Again, if you want to give a specific example, we can dive into any examples, but...
Okay, so I'll look to provide you with that example. Before then, I had another point, and then I'll toss it back to Dooby. But is about the radicalization, right? Mm-hmm. You talked about how the Palestinians are like rabid dogs, you made a metaphor comparison. You weren't trying to say that they are rabid dogs. You just were just making a metaphor there. And that like it'd be weird to necessarily have to be concerned about that dog rather than concerned about the people that it could harm. So the point that I'm moving towards is that there is clearly a cycle of violence here. a cycle of violence that like understanding that what this conflict isn't a war in and of itself. It's just like the latest battle in an ongoing war, right? That history doesn't begin on October 7th, and so we have to look at this within a greater context. That actions of violence previously caused this moment to happen. Like, you would agree with that much, right? That like this.
No, I wouldn't use the term cycle of violence because it implies an equal contribution by both sides. I think that if the Palestinians wanted peace tomorrow, I think there would be a road to peace. If Israelis wanted peace, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's just a cycle that's got equal parts back and forth pushing towards it. I think that there's a heavy push for violence on the Palestinian side, and it's going to take some significant international and domestic efforts to slowly move them away from that.
Yeah, so I'm fine with saying that one side is worse than other. Like, we may disagree on which side that is, but it doesn't matter, right? Like but that doesn't. You can call it whatever you like. So I'm just using the word cycle of violence. If you don't like
sure.
that phrase,
we're in an overall war that has been raging for 80 years. Sure.
Okay, great. Yeah. I would say that this event is a radicalizing event. I would say that even if through some military calculus that you would agree with, and maybe I would agree with, that Israel's acting within the bounds of international law, that this still I see reports of children talking about how like all their friends are dead. They actually watched it happen, right? There was that one kid who pulled out of the rubble like a severed head. He was just carrying a severed head with him, right? Those kids are traumatized, and that will determine their actions in the future. That this course of action that's being taken now by Israel, even if it was feasible to accomplish their goal of like wiping out Hamas, whatever that means, right? But even if it's feasible to accomplishing their goals, that this will inevitably end with more violence on the other side.
Possibly, but that's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the I guess the just righteous, or I guess the justification for the particular attacks. So is this going to be a radicalizing event for some people in the Gaza Strip? Yeah, possibly. It could be, for sure. But so was October 7th. Which one is more justified? October 7th had little to no justification in my eyes. I don't think that we generally justify attacks on civilian populations for the purpose of killing and capturing civilian populations. I think the invasion of the Gaza Strip, though it amounts to far more civilian casualties, has far more justification for it. So even if you might have radicalizing events on both sides, which is certainly true, some are going to be more justified than others. So
we can always claim in these conflicts that one side is more just than the other. I can make an opposite claim.
No, you can't.
And have
not for this conflict. If they were similar claims on both sides.
For October 7th. I'm not saying October 7th. Okay, whatever.
Okay.
Right, so, I'm saying that like I can make an opposite claim for other incidences, right? I can do that, right? But there will always be like an argument for justifications. But in the end, if we actually want peace, at some point the violence has to stop.
I agree.
Now, okay, great. We agree.
But if Israel stops, I don't think the violence stops. It has to come from the Palestinian side. If Israel stops, it's not going to make the Houthis and Hezbollah and Iran stop caring. It's not going to make Hamas go away. It's not going to make the Martyr Fund stop from the PLO. It's not going to I think the violence will probably still continue. Hamas has said as much. Like they want 100 October 7th.
So if you agree, I mean, I'd agree with you. This is like a radicalizing event, right? And there are other radicalizing events that have happened throughout history. Do you think that the West Bank is another radicalizing series of events, radicalizing thing that Israel should, if they actually do want peace in at some form in the future, they need to pull out these settlements and pull out the settlers there?
I don't know. I think they should stop, but I don't have like strong feelings about it. It's probably not helping them. It's probably making people in the West Bank like more irritated towards them. But I mean, from the Israeli perspective, they're just going to always hate them and try to intifada them and, attack them constantly over and over again anyway. So it seems like there's a little motivation on the Israeli side for them to stop. I think they should probably stop. Right. I think it just serves to piss everybody off even more. But
right. So do you think that there should be like international pressure put on Israel? Not just like the speeches or statements. I mean, like boycotts, sanctions, etc., to end the West Bank occupation, or maybe not occupation, but at least the settlements.
I don't know. I don't have strong feelings about it. I could probably be persuaded one way or another. But the problem is there's no international pressure you can put on Hamas or radical Palestinians, so I don't know how that would look on both sides. Like, say that Israel slows down on the settlements and terrorist attacks continued, which is kind of like a history of that happening. Like, what do you do? Like, there's no international pressure putting on Hamas, because anytime you cut off aid to Hamas, people are instantly screaming and crying on TV that now civilians are being starved, and it's collective punishment. So it seems to be hard when both sides wage war in very different ways, right? The goal of Hamas is civilian deaths. The goal sometimes of all the Palestinians is civilian deaths. So what do you do in that case? I mean, like, when you're fighting such an uneven war where the punishment is so different. When one side, if a person dies, they've done shaheed and they're a martyr and it's good for the cause. And on the other side, when a person dies, there's immense, international backlash against it. I'm not sure how that's such an uneven
I think,
war.
yeah, I agree that it's difficult. But I'm, like, my perspective, I guess, is that what makes the most sense is to attack the underlying justifications for the civilian deaths, for the attacks, right? To dismantle those, and this weakens the...
Sure, if you want to dismantle that, then you have to
Hamas.
dissolve Israel as a state and just make it one state from river to sea, right? That's what I think most of the Palestinians fighting want. But I mean, that's not realistic, so... Not potentially. I think from pulling I think that's what... The majority of them want, a one-state solution.
Yeah, so and I think... That is something I do want to talk to you about, because I think you tend to just kind of wave that off as like a pipe dream, something people say to jerk themselves off and feel good. But listening to your discussions about like two-state solutions, it seems like any two-state solution that I've heard of, or I've heard anybody speak about, just is tantamount to like a powder keg, right? It's just amounts like some kind of powder keg, and there will inevitably be an attack from one side or the other. And so inevitably to more attacks, and this leads to further justification for conflict and war, etc.
Why does it have to be inevitable?
Well, I think given that we have like radicalizing events like this war, like prior instances.
Do you think if the Palestinians just chilled the fuck out and like focused on building a country rather than more bombs, do you think that it would significantly change the association between these two people?
Absolutely, but I don't.
So I think
expect
that has to be that has to be where like 85% of the effort is pushed towards, because that's where like your huge improvements are going to come from. Pushing Israelis towards it. I mean, like, there's IDF violence against settlers, there's settler violence against people in the West Bank. Like, there's violence from Israelis, sure, but it's like it's more the exception rather than like the stated goal ideology of like the larger share of the Palestinian people, and that has to change. If that doesn't change, then everything else is a pipe dream.
I think I like half agree with you, right? So I think the reason is that I don't think that we should expect that the Palestinians will just stop, right? They'll just chill out, forget about all the things that make them upset about the situation, about their family members that died, whatever, and they'll just turn into like robots and not give a fuck about any of it and move forward and try to do.
To be clear, that's not an unrealistic possibility. I think that is more than possible. I think it is possible for Palestinians to chill, but one, we need to recognize that has to happen, because that's not even an international recognition right now. Palestinians are just the poor victims of evil Jewish Zionist, murderers. And then two, there needs to be like an international effort to make that happen.
I agree. Well, I have to agree again. I actually don't. I'm not. I think it is inevitable that there will be violence. Maybe not violence in the way that is currently happening, right? Maybe they don't need to form another Hamas. But I think that even if they were to form like a two-state, a second state, and they were to have like a deal, a peace plan, etc., I think eventually you're going to have some people who haven't let go of the grievances, who are still angry, and those people will lash out on both sides.
Why?
Right? You might have
everyone else
Israelis
in the world is able to do this. Palestinians can do it too. I believe in them.
Is that true?
Germany got along with everybody after World War II, after taking over like 80% of the landmass of Europe. I mean, Japan more or less gets along with its neighbors after having like generals that were running swords through hundreds of civilians in contests, how many people they could kill and babies they could rape, and people they could experiment on. I mean, yeah, like countries go to war, they have these horrible ordeals that happen, and for the most part, eventually we kind of, in a generation or two, sometimes we get along and shit happens and you move back. Sometimes it doesn't work and people have to be transferred from one area to another. I think that happened between Turkey and Greece, where they had these massive population transfers because they weren't happy with each other and they wanted to move around. I mean, it happens. Like it can happen.
I agree. I agree that it happens that after a conflict, relations settle out and people stop murdering each other, right? But I think in each of those cases, I'm sure I don't know anything off the top of my head, but I'd be extremely surprised. I'd fucking myself in the ass, okay? If there weren't instances where there are people who are so angry about what happened, so angry about losing the war, whatever the committed terrorist attacks, killed.
We're not talking about the problem isn't instances. The problem are elected governments doing terrorism. The problem right now isn't instances of Palestinian violence. It's widespread Palestinian violence. This has always been the problem. It's not instances of isolated terrorist attacks. It's the Palestinian governments, plural, and Palestinian leaders, plural, that have engaged in violence. This is the issue. It's not just collections of these terrorist bombers. It's widespread violence and attacks. That's the issue.
Wait, so to be clear, so if they did have a two-state solution, and there were Palestinians or religious right-wing Israelis who were angry about this, right? Who still wanted the rest of the land and still hated the other state, and they committed terrorist attacks, mass shootings, murders, etc. My feeling is that this would be a justification from both sides who still fucking hate each other to further conflict, further military occupation, to reignite tensions again. Right? Like I don't think it needs to come from like a government, an elected government for this to be something that inflames tensions and leads to more like further conflict.
I think that changes things significantly, though.
Yeah, I agree. It changes things significantly, but I don't think it's necessary, right? I think that if they were to clear out the West Bank and create like a second Palestinian state, if there were attacks going either way, I think we should expect that there will be like a reignition of like a conflict, like actual military conflict.
I think if the Palestinians were making steps towards building a real civilization and society, I think that the isolated terrorist attacks would look a lot different.
That I agree with.
Like the way that people view them. Like, I don't know if Israel has ever looked at Palestinians and been like, oh my God, this isolated terrorist attack, now we need to go to war at the Palestinian territories. I don't know if there's been like a history of that.
Yeah, I just think that to get to that point, they wouldn't need like, not just a lot of support, but they would need like multiple years of like either no or very little attacks, right? Like from individuals
Israel?
Or from Palestinians. Right?
No, I don't think so. I think if there was a Palestinian government that had the widespread support of the Palestinian people, and they were on talks or seeking to, like actually negotiate some solution. I think that right now probably not actually on this close to October 7th, but I think in some time I think Israelis would be warm to that idea, because the conflict sucks. It doesn't help anybody. It's just like a fucking drain. It's a drag on the entire region.
Right. Yeah, I just maybe I'm like more pessimistic than you, but I just don't see how that can work.
Okay. Well, I think what is the alternative solution?
I'll get there. Just one second. So we've spoken a bit about the radicalization on the Palestinian side, but I don't think people speak enough about. I don't know if I call it radicalization. Maybe the tolerance for brutality, tolerance for ethnic cleansing on the Israeli side, and now this is like increased. So I think I sent you a poll I think like a month or two ago while you were streaming, right? Of like from like 2016, and I'm sure you've looked at this, where close to like half of Israeli Jews supported the expulsion of the Palestinian Arabs. And I think it was just Arabs. So my understanding is it included Israeli Arabs, but even if it were just the Palestinian Arabs, sure, that I think there'd still be that problematic. Today, given the October attack and given how upset people are about this, I would expect the number to be a lot higher, right? So given that there's like an increase for like this tolerance for violence, tolerance for ethnic cleansing of the Arabs on the Israeli side, and this population is also being radicalized in a way, it's somewhat justifiable, right? I think it's reasonable for them to be upset and to want to get rid of these fucking crazy people. I think that not enough attention is given to the de-radicalization that needs to happen on the Israeli side, whether it's the West Bank settlers or just the government itself, right? And how they've had like this religious right-wing tilt or a push for the last couple of decades.
Yeah, I don't know if there needs to be. I think Israelis have shown that they're willing to accept peaceful terms if other people come to them with peaceful terms. Happened with Egypt, happened with Jordan, happened with Bahrain. It's de facto happened with like Saudi Arabia. I think they're capable of doing it, and we've seen that they're capable of doing it. I don't know right now if the Palestinians can. Seems like they can't. Yeah, but I mean, there are radicals in Israel. There are radical settlers. Like, yeah. It's not all the same. Unless you have like an alternative suggestion. I'm curious like what that would look like. I don't know what else would be more realistic than anything I've said though.
Yeah. So, so to me, the way that I've, like I said, when I've looked at two-state solution ideas, proposals, discussions, it to me it seems to amount to like I said, a powder keg. A one-state solution is. People say it's extremely unrealistic. Nobody wants this, right? If you say this, you're just jerking yourself off in a coffee shop somewhere, like Betty Morris said, I think. Or I didn't think he said the jerking off part. But long term, that seems to be the most realistic way to achieve like peace. So now I understand that these two populations hate each other. What
seems to be the most effective way to achieve peace?
A one-state solution, like having a single state with equal rights.
No, but okay.
Wait, can you flesh out why you think that's like ridiculous?
Why? Because why would any Jewish person want to live in one state where now they're an ethnic minority against a group of people that have been trying to kill them for 80 years, and like who've elected a party who literally like wants to eliminate all of Israel and ship out all the Jews, and who align themselves with other people saying like death to Israel, death to America, death to the Jews. Speaking of the Houthis or whatever, like no, why the f do you ever want one state with those people? Of course not.
Yeah, but why would you want to live next door to those people? Right,
so they have their own country, their own borders. It feels. I'd way rather live next door to a crazy person than share a bedroom with them.
But again, given that they're so close to each other, you might as well be in bed with them.
Really?
Right?
Do you feel that way?
Yeah.
If you had a crazy person living across the street from you, that'd feel the same way as a crazy person living in your basement?
The thing is, I don't think they're across the street. I think it's more comparable to like the next room over, right? Rather than in your room, they're like right outside your fucking door.
It's the next room over with a huge border wall with snipers that are positioned, looking at with checkpoints. Like, there's clearly a divide, a big separation.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what happened October 7th. These border walls, these snipers, etc. This isn't like
okay. To be clear, you're invalidating the complaint of every single Palestinian that feels like they don't have free travel through Israel and stuff. You're saying all of those complaints are bullshit. You're saying that they might as well basically be living on top of each other. That
no, hold on. I'm not saying they might as well be living on top of each other. I think the reality is that they're very close to each other, right? It's not like they're like a far-flung region
with
of the world.
huge military divisions between both, right? They're not allowed to hold a military. They're not allowed to have like weapons. They can't control their airspace.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's a huge difference. They're not like an equally empowered people to conduct war against Israel, the same as if they were like, it was a one state thing.
Well, yeah, but long term they might be, or short term, right? So like if they had like a second state, and even if they didn't have sovereignty over their borders and over their like immigration policies and over their imports and exports, etc. Eventually, they're going to be moving in that direction, right?
Yeah, but I think the idea would be when they finally got something to live for, besides like the weird obsession with killing, Israeli people, they probably would be less interested in conducting that type of warfare. Would be the hope.
Again, that just seems like such a far-flung thing to me. It seems as unrealistic as a one-state solution.
Okay, well, that's what happened with Egypt. That's what happened with Jordan. That's what happened with every other like Arabian peninsula country that once swore to destroy Israel with all their might, and now are basically trading partners and friends with them. I mean, it seems like it happened with everybody else almost. Like, why is this impossible to imagine?
Because I think that the grievances between the Palestinians and the Israelis are more like not just more recent, but they're more present. They're it's every day they're upset about these things that have happened to them yesterday. Right, and about their family members that have died. I think that these grievances don't just go away.
Then just lose and die.
Well, okay, then let me ask you that.
Yeah, lose and die.
So lose and die. Okay, so if the Israelis feel like the only way that they can achieve peace in the region, right, is to actually like carry out an ethnic cleansing, right, like to push all these people out of the area and into Egypt or into the sea or whatever do you think that would be something that you? I think you were like leaning toward this position initially when you started looking into this. Like, how do you feel about that position now?
I don't know. I'm not like a huge supporter of it, but I mean, if that's the only way to figure the conflict out, I mean, at some point. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know.
You don't know. You don't know whether or not you would support an ethnic cleansing of the area.
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah.
Well, are you leaning one way more than the other?
I mean, I lean towards no. I think there's possibilities to achieve peace with Palestinians, but it feels like every single pro-Palestinian person I've argued with seems to assume that Palestinians have like the infinite, Palestinian warrior gene, and nothing can de-radicalize them except for, Israelis bending over and taking it because out of the goodness of their Zionist hearts, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, I would hope that there is some sort. Well, you just told me the only possible solution is a one-state solution. You think it's more realistic than a two-state solution? That's never happening. If that's the case,
I
if
think
there's just like a one-state solution versus ethnically cleansing all the Palestinians in the area, that's the ethnic cleansing easy. That's the easiest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Because the one-state solution is going to be an ethnic cleansing of all the Jewish people out of the area.
I don't think that's true.
No.
It's fine that you can say that's not true, but history does not favor you there, and no Israeli person accepts that. And a lot of the Palestinians, like Hamas, state that is explicitly their goal. So I don't know why you would think otherwise. You're literally running on copium and dreams there, because history and Palestinians disagree with you, and Israelis don't think it would happen either. So yeah, I don't know.
But we have like comparable like examples of this right throughout the world, like the United States and South Africa, right, where you have two populations that had many legitimate grievances against each other that nobody thought could live together, and they did, right? So this is possible. I think that's possible.
I have to do more research in South Africa, but it's probably not. It's probably disanalogous. I think the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is pretty unique historically, and I don't know if you can draw like direct comparisons to other country things. Like, I don't.
Well, yeah, I think if you were to look into South Africa a little more, you'd understand more why I'm making the comparison, right? Because in South Africa, you had millions of people who were forcibly kicked off their land. So not just like they left and they weren't allowed to come back. They were forcibly kicked off their land. Millions of people, because they were black, and that land was given to white people because of a law that said that white people. The white minority, by the way, was a very small minority, had to own the vast majority of the land in the country, right? And there's a much more brutal system of oppression there than exists in Israel and any part of Israel. So I think there are comparisons you can draw, and we can look at how these two populations had a lot of grievances.
I don't know if the leadership and I don't know if the ideologies driving the people were similar.
Well, okay, then we can make no comparisons anywhere.
I'm not saying we can't make any comparisons anywhere. I'm saying that that's like a really, really important thing to keep in mind.
The offenses were similar in that these individuals couldn't didn't have free movement, right? They were where you could go was decided by a pass, right? And what kind of pass you had.
No. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about like the apartheid conditions. I'm saying that like the resistance leadership and what people were going for, I think were different. And I could be wrong. I don't have the best South African history, but like, were there widespread black South Africans saying that like our goal is to drive all white people from this region? It seemed like Nelson Mandela was probably one of the, okay. Well then why is it that the ANC was like the most popular movement when it came to resisting South Africa, and they largely rejected mass violence against civilians? Can you explain that? How did that work?
I don't think they did initially. I think there was violence coming from the ANC initially.
My understanding,
there were violent riots all over the country.
Wait, my understanding, if I look at I thought I'd look at the numbers before, I could be wrong. Weren't there like 50 civilians killed by the ANC, like in the entirety of their fucking existence? Am I wrong on that? ANC civilian deaths killed.
I don't know the exact number, but I know that there was violence, right? And in addition to peaceful protests, and it eventually led to them being the movement being made illegal.
Okay, a total of 71 people died from ANC attacks from 1976 to 1984. Of these, 52 were civilians and 19 were security force members, compared with how many Israelis were killed in just the Second Intifada, which was half the time. Wasn't it like 1,000 or 2,000? Or Israeli people that died? Casualties on the Israeli side was 1,000, 644 to 733 Israeli civilians killed, 215 to 301 Israeli troops killed. So in half the time, they killed like 10 times as many people. So I don't know if South African blacks were so set on killing all the whites, why was Nelson Mandela and his cuck group like the most popular ones that like seemed to push pretty hard back against just indiscriminate killing of civilians and only targeting government infrastructure, as opposed to Palestinian groups that seem to largely encourage terrorist attacks, hijacking airplanes, suicide bombing, killing civilians as much as possible, the martyring of their own civilians. Like, can you explain how that difference is? I'm asking because I legitimately, obviously I don't think that's the case,
so
but I don't know South
understanding.
African history, so tell me why did Nelson Mandela?
Yeah, my understanding is is that Nelson Mandela wasn't opposed to violence until like after he was imprisoned. I think before he was imprisoned, he was involved in violence or supported violence.
Wait.
That's my understanding of it.
He was. I think the ANC supported violence, but against like government infrastructure and stuff, not just the killing of civilians.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That I agree with.
Whereas it seems like and they had like what 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the population. Jesus, and it's a way bigger country too. So I don't know if it's comparable here.
Yeah. So you're saying that because the death toll is larger in this conflict, which has been going on for a much longer time, right? A much longer time period. You're saying, and they've and I think that because they're getting a lot of like international support from the Hamas side to continue the conflict, right? And there's like a lot of incentive from the Hamas leadership to continue the conflict and to not seek peace. I assume that because this is the case, right? Even if we were to remove Hamas and remove the radicalized element or the militaristic element, there'd be no potential for these two groups of people to come, like the civilian populations, to come together and form a government together.
If you
or form like a
if you remove
together.
all the if you remove everything, yeah, I mean, that's
if you were to remove Hamas entirely and remove
all the radicalization, yeah, I mean, there's a possible future for that, but like, there's a lot of steps in between that would have to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, like this is a very, very long-term project, right? That I don't think Israel could do by itself. I think you would need to have the international community come forward and take responsibility for this. Because I think it's reasonable to say that, hey, if we don't want Israel to carry out an ethnic cleansing, they need support so that they don't feel like they need to, right? And that support is not just monetary; it could be
that might be this is like a 50+ years maybe into the future thing, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't think it would ever happen though, because I think if Palestine was developing as a strong, independent country, I don't think they would want to merge with another country. I think in general, countries don't like to merge with other countries. You want to be your own country. Why would you cede all of that to somebody else?
Weren't there? So my understanding is that that these people don't just. I agree that I think a lot of Palestinians do want a two-state solution. They do want an independent Palestine. To me, that seems as unrealistic as a one-state solution.
I thought most of them wanted a one-state
short-term
solution.
or long-term. Especially, I think it's the opposite. I mean, you might be right, but my understanding is that it's the opposite. That most want some form of two-state solution. And I think I would need to look it up. I'm too lazy right now, but you might be right. So whatever it is. So if they, you threw me off with that question. So if they're seeking this solution, right? And what's the word I'm looking for? You had the international community, and Hamas wasn't there, right? So the military wasn't there
Hamas is just a symptom. Hamas is not the only problem.
Yeah, I agree.
But go ahead.
I agree with that. So if you dealt with that symptom, and then you dealt with the Israeli antagonisms, right, like the settler violence, the settlements themselves, long term, and you had the international support, or the international community come forward and offer up their militaries or soldiers, boots on the ground, to police the region, to ensure the security of everybody living there, and to ensure that we don't have another conflict come up. I don't see why long term we couldn't move toward a single state.
Well, we can't even get like peace between like this is such a far off. It's just so far into the future. We can't even get them living together like in different countries working well. Why would we assume as one state it would work well? And this would never be agreed upon by the Israelis. The Palestinians probably wouldn't be happy with any terms they get. Nothing here is reasonable. Like this is farther off than a two-state solution, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think right now it's farther off than two-state solution. But I think right now a two-state solution is also very far off.
It can be far off, but this is what you're suggesting is farther off than a two-state solution.
Yeah, I think it's farther off than a two-state solution.
Then,
but also,
right now
and I think there are a lot of reasons for that. I don't think that the only hurdles are the violence, right? I think that there's like an ethno-nationalistic strain in Israel, right? The Jewish state.
What do you mean? There's an ethno-nationalistic strain from the entire region. What do you mean?
I don't think it's to the extent that it exists in Israel.
Sorry,
Israel
which country does it not exist to that extent? Does Saudi Arabia not care if the majority of their citizens are Arabic, or does Jordan not care, or does Egypt not care, or does Turkey? We probably would say Turkey not care. Yeah, what do you mean? Everybody.
Do any of those countries have it in their basic law that it's a nation for the Egyptian Arabs, the religion, the culture, the people, etc. Or that the right to national self-determination in that nation is for the Arabs and no other group?
No, because nobody moves to those countries. They don't need it.
Okay, well, that exists in Israel, right? Israel,
Yeah, because Israel has a group of people
that,
next to them. The international community is pushing to fully integrate into that country and bring in 6 million more. What do you mean? Yeah, of course.
Okay, so of course they want an ethno state because they feel threatened, and then again, that's a reasonable fear from them, right? I think that the fear that they're going to come, if they were to have like one man, one vote, they'd lose their ethnic majority, and that would lead to them being oppressed, being made second class citizens, being genocided. All these things are reasonable fears, but I also think that these were reasonable fears in South Africa, where the white authority, the white government, the population was a much smaller a percentage of the population than the Israeli Jews would be, right? I think it was like fucking 17% or something.
And I think that if it was the stated goal of like Mandela or the ANC or other groups to destroy and kill and eliminate all the white people in South Africa, yeah, it's like, oh shit, I understand why you guys want to be like a little bit more cautious about
of
how you're
course
to resolve these issues. But
of course. But if you were to remove the group with that stated goal, you remove Hamas, which had that in its charter.
No. The problem is not just Hamas; it's that they have essentially the support. Most Palestinian people want to kick out most Israeli people.
Okay, but this is why I referenced that poll earlier, because right now I don't. Given that was in 2016, and it was like almost half of Israeli Jews. I think today we'd probably find that most Israeli Jews want to kick out most Arabs.
Probably, but I think most Palestinians
like,
want a one-state solution with no Israelis involved.
I don't think that's true. I think typically when they call for a one-state solution, they want, what they're actually asking for is equal rights with the Israeli Jews.
Of course, but they would get that and then a massive population majority. So,
yeah, just like the South African blacks got. They had a massive population.
Yeah, but I don't think the South, again, to reiterate,
I don't massacre the white people.
Were the South African blacks stating that it was their goal to eliminate and kick out all the white people from South Africa? I don't think that was ever part of their goal. I think they just wanted equal rights.
There were definitely groups within the South African anti-apartheid movement that had this belief that South Africa.
Yeah, but they were a minority, not 70
African.
or 80% of them, like there are on the West Bank for support for the October 7th attacks, or widespread across all the Palestinian people who want a one-state solution where they can kick Israelis out. Like,
okay, but putting that into context, though, right? So yes, they're supporting these attacks. But it's not just because they hate Jews. It's because there's all this antagonism previously, right? So if we remove
I think it's because historically they just
radicalizing.
Like, no, I don't. I disagree. I think it's because they don't think they belong there. I think they think that they should be able to kick them out.
Okay, so you think that even if Israel, well, I'm not even going to ask you the question because I know you agree with it. So you think it's not just that it is because they're Jewish, basically. So it is because
that's
they don't
a big
want to
part of
Jews.
it. Yeah, that's why the de-radicalization is going to take some time. Yeah, and it probably has to involve other Arab and Muslim communities as well.
Okay. So I agree that there's definitely that's definitely part of the problem, right? There is definitely anti-Semitism that exists, whether it's religious or nationalistic or whatever, right? It definitely exists within the Palestinian Arabs and in other Arabs.
I'm just saying it's fundamentally like a different thing. Like imagine if the ANC was committing mass terrorism against civilians and was also backed by Wakanda. That would make it more comparable. South Africa is not comparable to Israel-Palestine. It's just not.
I totally okay. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah. This is, I guess, why I talked about the cycle of violence, how that's so important. So it's like you say that, well, the Palestinians want to kill the Israelis, right? Like they simply want to wipe them out, and this is a widespread belief. You say, okay. But then what causes that, right? Like the cause would be, well, yeah, part of it, sure. The anti-Semitism, definitely, 100%. Sure, that's there as well, right?
Kind of. I mean, I don't even think it's anti-Semitism, actually. I don't care for the religious analysis. I think it's just been decades of encouragement for them to fight for their land back from surrounding Arab states that wanted to kick out Israeli people.
I'm sorry, you got a little low there.
I think that the decades of fighting that Palestinians and the surrounding Arab states engaged in with Israel is why the Palestinians want to kick out all of the Israeli citizens.
Okay, so there's an ongoing conflict. There is a feeling, whether you agree with it or not, I don't know at this point, but that they are a second-class citizenship, that they are being oppressed, and that causes feelings of resentment. They want to get these people, these foreigners, these interlopers, out of their land. Correct?
Well, no, originally it wasn't oppression. It was just having them in the land, period, was unacceptable.
Yeah, sure. But I'm talking about currently. So because we're talking about polls and everything of current individuals.
I don't know if oppression is the thing that drives them. I think it's the sectarian conflict. I think it's the idea.
You don't.
Yeah.
Come on. You don't think that what might drive them are the humiliations that happen to them daily
No.
in terms of
No.
Okay, so that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I didn't say it didn't matter. I'm sure it's a small part of it, but I don't think that's the largest driver. No.
It's a small part that they don't have freedom of movement in their nation. They don't have access to resources because of the blockade that Israel had on terms of Gaza. That that their houses are demolished. Those things are small things. The actual, and this is why I asked about these radicalizing events, because these radicalizing events are actually important. So I don't know why you wouldn't think that
if these things were such a huge part for them, why not just stop fighting so that the blockade can be lifted and allow the humanitarian aid in? If that was the big thing you were worried about, if you wanted to prioritize your well-being and the lack of humiliation, if you wanted to prioritize that over just fighting Israelis,
let's look at the West Bank then.
What?
Let's look at the West Bank, where the fighting has almost entirely stopped, right? Or at least it's vastly reduced as compared to Gaza, where you have a government, their government in quotes, that is willing to work with Israel.
Yeah, but that government doesn't even have the support of the people. There's a reason why Hamas won't hold elections again.
Yes, they don't have the support of the people. Yes. Okay, we're going to get to that. We'll pull back. Okay, I'm going to write it down. They don't have support of the people. Okay, let's hold on to that. But we're going to put a pin on that one, right? So you have a government there that is under the thumb, I would describe it as under the thumb of Israel. I won't put that in your mouth, but a government that is willing to work with them, that has sworn off terrorism, that has accepted the existence of Israel.
Well, sworn off terrorism is pretty strong. I'm pretty sure Hamas still operates out of the West Bank occasionally, and I'm pretty sure the PLO still runs their martyr fund for people that die fighting Israeli soldiers. But go ahead.
They actually swore off terrorism previously, right? One of their leaders, was it Arafat? I forget which one. I can look it up. But they did literally, at least the leader, at one point swore it off. And that's why they were able to work with, within peace accords. They were able to.
Hold on.
Oh, okay, sure. Hey y'all, I'm streaming on my YouTube.
Palestinians eliminated terrorism in some world. Don't know when this happened, but go ahead.
I was just doing an ad. Hey guys, I'm streaming on my YouTube too.
Oh God.
YouTube.com/Primecayes. I'm sorry, I'm a fucking streamer. Okay, all right. This is how the game works. But you could subscribe to the channel. I don't know. Membership's open. I don't know. You can do anything like that. Stream Monday, Thursdays, Sundays sometimes too. Okay. Sorry, yeah. What was the last thing I was saying? I was too busy.
Yeah, at some point, apparently, Palestinians' leadership swore off violence. I don't think that ever happened, but go ahead. What was the next?
In the West Bank is what you're talking about, Prime.
The West Bank specifically, yes, indeed. Okay, so you have a partner there. Why haven't we seen advances with this particular partner? You would at the very least agree that this partner is better than the partner in Gaza, right? Or the government in Gaza.
I mean, aren't conditions in the West Bank better than the conditions in Gaza?
Aren't the conditions in the West Bank better than the conditions in Gaza? I guess it would depend on what axis you're
really. By which axis is it worse to live in the West Bank versus Gaza, which is repeatedly proclaimed by lefties as the largest open-air prison in the world that is currently being genocided by Israelis? How is it worse to live in the West Bank?
Previously, to October 7th, their homes weren't being regularly demolished. They didn't have settlers to deal with directly because those settlers had been removed when Israel pulled out. They had less, as far as I understand it, direct contact with Israeli security forces, except when they tried to march for peace and then they got their legs shot out of them, things like that. So there are axes where you could believe that it's better to be in Gaza than the West Bank. But I mean, I guess it depends on each individual person Through the West Bank, you have more access to.
If you could poll 100 neutral people and say, would you rather go live in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank? Where do you think, of those 100 people, how many would go to each place? Curious.
Dude, I'm not going to pull a number out of my ass. It's completely honest. No, I won't guess. I don't have to actually engage with this.
You're going to engage with the comparisons of the ANC in South Africa
just
to
say
Hamas?
95% exactly.
No, wait, come on. You're going to try to draw comparisons between Hamas and the ANC and South Africa and the struggle for the destruction of apartheid with fucking Israel-Palestine, and you wouldn't even give a guess on people who are willing to live in the West Bank versus the Gaza Strip? You really think, how many times has the West Bank been described as the largest open-air prison in the world? Or that hospitals are being bombed in the West Bank? Or that humanitarian aid is being fucked in the West Bank? Or that people in the West Bank can't get into Israel with work permits? Or that they have
they had work permits in Gaza, but the point is...
Well, pretty sure those were all rescinded on October 7th, but...
Yeah, I would agree. Well, I'm saying... So, I'm not saying right... hold on, are we clear that I'm not saying like right this moment? Like right now, obviously, it would be awful. It would be awful to be in Gaza. We can agree on that. But I'm saying before October 7th, I don't even... All right, so I don't even know why we're going down this route. The point is that we have a partner there within the West Bank. Why haven't we seen more progress there? Let's just focus on that, please.
Why hasn't there been more progress in the West Bank?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Abbas isn't really seen, I think, as a legitimate ruler. I don't think most of the people in the West Bank even support Abbas. I think they are more likely to support the terrorist activities of Hamas. And then the West Bank people are operating under this like quasi-provisional government that's just seen as basically an Israeli puppet because they're not really taking any steps towards actual independence, because I don't think Abbas or any Palestinians want to just have a West Bank state. They probably want to include Gaza, but there's like no path towards like resolving the occupation right now for them. That'd probably be my guess. It's just like there's no like concrete path. Like how the fuck are we even going to resolve the current situation? That path just doesn't exist right now. That'd be my guess.
I love this, Stephen. Right, because this is my point when we had a conversation a few weeks ago, right? That when there is no political advancements happening, right? When there are no political wins, when the side of peace, right, which would be the political process, is stymied, that it strengthens the extremes, specifically the right, the far right, the violent end of the spectrum. So when the Palestinian Authority is simply looked at as a puppet of the Israelis, right? Whether you agree with that or not, I don't know, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. But like whether the inhabitants of the West Bank feel that, they're not going to support it. So they'll think, well, if this...
Okay, that's fine. I can agree with that. Then fight and die.
I'm glad you can. I'm amazed that you can, because you couldn't do that previously. But that's okay. I'm glad.
Well, I didn't do it previously because it's a dumb point. Like if you want to tell Palestinians,
hold on, let me finish. So you said that they don't have support, right? They don't have to support the people. The one that does have support is the violent side, right? Like violent actions will always gain support when there isn't a path to peace. That simply is the case for any type of conflict. The conflicts only end peacefully when there is a peaceful path. So as long as there is a
peaceful path right now. The peaceful path are Palestinians stop terrorist attacking Israelis and start building a civilization or start building a country. That's the path right now. But nobody wants to hold Palestinians to that standard because we treat them all like 9-year-olds, I guess, because the average Gazan citizen is a minor at this point. But like that's the path to peace, but nobody wants to go down that path to peace because Palestinians want to fight for more territory. So as long as they want to fight, there will be no peace. It's super simple.
So you don't think there were, as long as they want to fight, there will be no peace. But I guess this is where at least part of our breakdown is that like you're able to make some sort of cleanly defined partition here where it's not a cycle, right? There's a start. There's a start where these Palestinians one can perform some sort of violence, right? And then the Israelis respond, right? Now they may respond in better ways, might be respond in worse ways, right? Ways you would agree with, ways you would disagree with, but they respond, right? And then
wow, retard gamer, thanks for the 24
There's another clean partition where it's up to the Palestinians. How are you going to respond to this, right? Are you going to simply end the fighting so we can get to peace, right? Because the Israelis, well, they're an open partner to peace, certainly, right? So all it takes is for the Palestinians to stop. I'm saying that like it's not actually one or the other, that it's both. That both of these partners have to make an effort for peace. Now, within this current conflict, what does that look like? That would be the return of the hostages, certainly, and then a ceasefire, right? Like we return all the hostages, and then we have a ceasefire, and the next step to actually have a permanent peace would be to begin negotiations. But to simply say that, well, the Gazans, well, they have to stop. That's not going to happen when bombs are dropping on them. You can say that, right? They can all just put down their weapons immediately, but that will never happen.
Okay, then they can get eliminated. I guess that's it. That's if you're saying that's what's going to happen, then I guess that's the only future for them. Then is elimination, oblivion.
Why would that have to be the only future
because
for them?
No sane person in the universe would expect Israel to approach for peace a group of people that have been shooting rockets into civilian territories for 20 years. That's just
I don't understand.
Also,
I don't understand. So, okay, once again, youtube.com/Primecayes. That's where you can find me. It's spelled right here. Right here, youtube.com or twitch.tv/Primecayes. But not right now because, he's banned. That's where you can find me. We'd love to have you. Subscribe or whatever. Support the channel. Donate. Super chat. Whatever. If you feel like it. But okay, we'll just wait for him.
DB, did you want is make my pee feel weird?
DB, tell me if you want when you want to jump in on this.
No, go for it.
Okay.
I will jump in when I feel like it's.
You agree that Israelis are never pursuing peace with people that have been trying to bomb them for 20 years, right? Do we agree with that, or do we?
Yeah, that's right. That's why I agree that they need to I agree with their goal to get rid of Hamas or dismantle Hamas or whatever the fuck I mean.
Okay, it's a good start. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the goal to dismantle Hamas. I think there's no permanent peace that includes Hamas, at least like a militarized Hamas at the very least. That simply doesn't exist. They have to, in one way or another, disappear. We can agree on that. I've got you there. But what does initiating peace look like? Because that's a sticking point. This is why I'm drawing attention to this. You're saying they have to initiate peace. So
initiating peace means a combination of the people in Gaza and the people in the West Bank under one government that are capable of administering to their areas without being influenced by Iran or other anti-Israeli proxies, that are capable of running their territories without diverting significant amounts of their administration to terrorist efforts against Israel. That's what it would be.
Okay, great. So it would have to be one government elected by the people who could stop the violence. All right. So are they to do that election now when there are bombs falling?
Probably not. I don't think they probably just vote for somebody more radical right now.
Oh, so, hold on, but you think that they could vote, that they could actually, in this moment in time, have a functioning election while the bombs are dropping?
Probably not. There'd have to be a ceasefire called and everything, right?
There would have to be a ceasefire. Okay, all right. Yes, there'd have to be a ceasefire. How can we get to that ceasefire? Maybe
Hamas,
I don't know.
Like turns over the leadership or flees the country or goes into permanent exile, and the hostages are returned.
So I would say that, the hostages are returned. Absolutely. That has to be the case. I think it's reasonable that hostages are returned and maybe some other concession from Hamas. That they disappear.
No, there are no concessions from Hamas. Hamas has to be gone, right?
Well, okay. So if you say that, then that means that this radical group that apparently can't be reasoned with at all, right? Then that means that you are de facto in favor for the wiping out of these individuals, because there's no way that Hamas will leave. That can't. They're just going to self-exile themselves. That's not going to happen.
Sure. Then you got to destroy them all. Then you eliminate them. Yeah, that's why they're doing the war right now. Yes.
Okay, so then but I'm talking about you in particular. You're saying that ethnic cleansing actually at this point is the only way, because
I don't think ethnic cleansing is the only way. I think that there are huge multilateral steps that can be taken to de-radicalize Palestinians and move them in a direction that's healthy for them. But nobody around the world
can't de-radicalize them now when bombs are falling on them. Correct?
Right now, sure. You keep saying that like it's an argument against bombing them, but it's not. You also can't de-radicalize Nazis while you're bombing them. That's not an argument against Dresden. That's not an argument against invading Berlin. That's not an argument against killing Hitler. Right now, Israel has a military aim and objective that I think they're fully justified in pursuing, and I think they ought to continue to pursue it. Just because that might be radicalizing more Palestinians or might make more Palestinians hate Israel, it's not an argument against it. You keep repeating that like you're making an argument against it, but you're not. Elections can't be held in the middle of war. I agree with that. They shouldn't have done October 7th. Since they did, this is the consequence, and now Israel's going to carry that out until they feel like they've gotten rid of Hamas. And then afterwards, you can start to pursue options related to elections of peace. But right now, I think Israel is fully within their right and justified to go after Hamas as much as they want to.
I'm saying that there's no end, that in the way that you've laid it out, that there's no end. I think in the way that the Netanyahu government, there is actually no end game here.
My end game is more, okay, my end game is more realistic than anything either of you have presented. If you two have a better end game, then go ahead and present it and we can talk through it.
Sorry, before we go through that, what end game specifically are you talking about? Are you talking about the end of this specific conflict right this second?
Or the end of the entire conflict? What do you mean? I mean, the end of this conflict is part of the entire conflict, but what do you mean?
Okay, so I meant like the bombing of Gaza, the current military
the end of the current conflict
operations.
probably needs to be whenever Israel's decided it's killed enough of Hamas for them to become dysfunctional in the Gaza Strip.
Okay. So when they have killed okay, so that's maybe we're talking past each other. Maybe that's the possibility that maybe we're talking past each other. So you're saying that Israel at some point declares victory. They say that we've reached some sort of operational degradation of Hamas, and now we can stop, right?
Yep.
Okay, right, and. They could reach this operational degradation without the return of the hostages, and then they would just stop, or
I imagine they probably, whatever degradation occurs, would probably entail the release of the hostages too. If Hamas is capable of retaining all the hostages against the IDF, then I think Israel would probably say they still have too much operational capacity. So these things probably go hand in hand with each other.
So they will bomb until Hamas is so degraded that then they hand over the hostages?
Yep. Do you think there's a better alternative to that? Or do you acknowledge that that's probably the most reasonable course of action for Israel to take?
Yeah, the simple alternative is what's been presented already.
What is the alternative?
Sure. We will exchange those hostages for a ceasefire.
First of all, does Hamas even accept that?
Yes, actually, that's what they've stated before. Yeah, well, we will. Sorry, not me.
Are you sure that wasn't in exchange for every single Palestinian prisoner as well?
We can look it up. But and I don't know. Maybe that's a reasonable request that could be negotiated. Right?
Why would you negotiate with people that terrorist attacked you and then captured a bunch of hostages and then give them back a bunch of their prisoners?
Because at some point the fighting has to stop. This is what I'm saying, that there is a cycle of violence. Look,
the fighting has to stop. Right now, one side can end the fighting completely. Hamas can release the hostages. Why aren't you debating pro-Hamas people?
And the other side can do so as well.
Yeah, but why would there's no expectation for them to.
There's no expectation. There's no expectation, of course. But then there's no path to peace. What I'm saying is that
there's no path to peace, then it's
unfortunate.
No, if there's no path to peace, then fine, then die. That's your alternatives. That's fine. If you want to say that like Palestinians just can't give up their intifada, their fatwa against the country of Israel, and they're going to continue to terrorist attack and take hostages, I think they can probably do better than that. I don't think that it's baked into their genetic code to do that. Okay, then there is a path to peace. What the path to peace should probably be the terrorist organization that runs your territory, that's committed to the destruction of all of Israel, should probably not be there anymore and should probably give back the hostages that it captured from a dance festival after a terrorist attack. I think that's a reasonable solution. I don't think it's reasonable to say that the country that just had the largest terrorist attack that was per capita like 20 times worse than 9/11 enacted upon its citizens, mostly civilians, who then had 250 hostages taken back to their country, some raped, some killed, that side should draw a ceasefire negotiation with those terrorist groups and then release all of their prisoners back to that country where they can come back then and do more terrorist attacks, which is why, by the way, those work permits were rescinded, is because of those 40,000 work permits that were issued, a ton of those people were involved in the actual cross-border attacks. I don't think it's reasonable to demand that Israel is the one to do the ceasefire and to come and meet Hamas across the finish line.
Do you think that the Gazans are in a reasonable mood at this point in time?
If they're unreasonable, that's fine, then die.
No,
those are your options. I'm sorry, but those are your options. When you're in the wrong in military conflict, then you can get firebombed, you can get nuked, you can get invaded, you can get killed.
But you don't
that's how it works. There is no onus on Israel right here to bow to terrorists that are trying to murder their civilian population that have avowedly stated they want to destroy the country.
There is no bowing involved. You can frame it as bowing. You can frame that. You can do that, but you can poison the audience with this idea that it's framing it as bowing to Hamas.
Okay, what would you call it if a terrorist attack you captured 200 hostages and then say, hey, let's negotiate?
Israel gets to keep its military. Israel gets.
Hold on. Israel has a military because Israel's a real country with a military. It doesn't get to keep it. It's owed a military.
Yeah, exactly. Great. And it all stands. None of that's being threatened.
Why it was never being threatened?
Agreed. So there's no bowing involved here, right?
There is bowing. Terrorists just captured 200 of their civilians as hostages, and you want them to negotiate to get those back?
The status quo, pre-October 7th, led to October 7th. And with Netanyahu, I believe Netanyahu, saying that we'd occupy Palestine.
Hold on. When you say the status
Gaza
quo led to October 7th, which part of prior to October 7th is it that justified mass terrorist attacks?
Don't say justified. I didn't say justified. I said led to. So I'm not going to have to fight on those grounds.
But you don't believe that it's fully justified, then why do we care? Then who cares? Let them suffer the consequences.
Of course it matters. I can disagree with everything. I can disagree with what led the Nazis, or what led Germany to back the Nazi part.
When you're telling Israelis that they need to negotiate on even terms with Hamas, you're basically saying that both sides have equal justification for what they're doing. That's what's implied there.
No, I don't have to say that. Then I don't know why you're caught up on this, because I don't have to say that. I can say that for the goal of peace, for the goal of eliminating, for not having another October 7th, for one day being able to lift side to side, whether it be a two-state solution or a one-state solution. In either of those, there has to be a moment where
Israel doesn't want peace with terrorists that are going to continue to terrorist attack them. I don't know why you don't understand that.
You got much louder first.
Yeah, my mic got turned down by 50%. I didn't notice on my volume on my computer. Why do you think Why do you think Israel would want peace with a terrorist group that's capturing civilian hostages?
Why would they want peace for a terrorist group that's capturing civilian hostages? So that terrorist group doesn't capture more civilian hostages.
Hold on. Why would the terrorist group not capture more civilian hostages if capturing them got it everything it wanted?
Because we were moving towards a path for peace.
But hold on. No. Everything that you're saying is just completely not in line with what any of the Palestinians want. This is nice that you, Prime Kai, or you, an American, thinks this. Palestinians don't want peace. Hamas is not fighting for peace. They're fighting for one state that is controlled by Palestinians, where Israel's or Jewish people are an ethnic minority, where ideally they can ship them out in the future. These are the avowedly stated goals and polling positions and opinions of Palestinians and Hamas people.
So what I'm doing with my finger, right? In case you can't tell. I'm making a circle. I'm drawing a circle, right? Okay. And then at any point in the circle, there's going to be unjust actions. At any point, that you'll find one side or other saying the other side is irredeemable.
Do you think that both sides have equal arguments there?
It doesn't.
It does matter. What do you mean it doesn't matter? Hold on. Should we have drawn up a peace plan with Nazi Germany?
Hold on.
No.
I'm not. No, hold on. Wait a second. When peace. Sorry. What am I trying to say here?
You were about to answer. Should we have drawn up a peace plan with Nazi Germany?
Sure. That we can't. You're saying that these individuals don't want peace. The Palestinians. That they simply don't want peace. Then I reply that the reason that they don't want peace. They might want peace, even if I grant you almost everything, right? Is that because of how they feel, whether it's just or unjust of their treatment, just or unjust of the prospects of their future, right? That is a reason as to why they feel this way.
Okay, but not all reasons are equal, and they shouldn't be treated equally. If you've got a shitty reason for doing something, nobody should kowtow to what you want. Just like you wouldn't give a child crying in a store a candy bar just because they throw a temper tantrum every time they pass by the Snickers aisle. You wouldn't give a terrorist group what they want because they do a terrorist attack and capture hostages. Should we have been forced to make peace with Nazi Germany?
So this is the fundamental break that we're having here. Okay. All right.
Well, hold on. I can tell you the fundamental break, but you don't want to acknowledge it. The fundamental break is you believe that there is equally, or probably you actually think there's more justification on the Palestinian side to be upset. So that's why you keep saying that, like, well, maybe Israel needs to come to the table and make concessions to Hamas. Well, that's really important. Okay, then answer the question then. If Nazi Germany would have sued for peace after they started to lose a lot of the conquered territory, should we have said, okay, fine, peace?
If they had sued for peace... okay, all right, no, I'll answer this. Yeah, sure. If Nazi Germany had sued for peace, sure, actually we can go into negotiations with them. 100%. Yeah, we can. We can go into they're losing territory, and they're in a disadvantageous position. What can we extract from those negotiations? Hey, like, stop murdering the Jews. That'd be important, right? Like, there's no path to peace if you don't dismantle these camps. That could be a thing that within the negotiation table that you can make. Right? Like, there is a world where Nazi Germany isn't destroyed, or like, at least by bombs.
Hold on.
Right?
I gotta grab one other thing, and I didn't actually expect you to bite that bullet. So now I have to think of, like, what are the next counter arguments to a guy that said we should have drawn up peace with Nazi Germany. That was an unbelievable statement to make. Hold on.
Okay. He'll be back. He's gonna grab something.
I want to speak, but I also like listening to you yell at each other. So it's like, it's very difficult for me.
Sure. Just let me know, or raise your flipper.
Carry on. Okay.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. YouTube.com/Primecayes. If you want more of me, maybe, I don't know. If it sounds exciting, right? Or if you hate me and you want to let me know, love to hear from you. YouTube.com/Primecayes. PRIMECAYES is where you can find me, or twitch.tv/Primecayes, but again, not right this second because Steven got himself banned for being awful.
Okay. So Nazi Germany, Nazis who have an ideology of racial superiority, of Aryan supremacy, that were running death camps, that were killing millions of Jews, non-desirables, Soviet captured prisoners of war. We negotiate with them, and then what? We continue to allow them to run their country like that?
Hold on. Did you not hear what I said previously? Did you not hear the part?
Yeah, you said, well, as long as they stop killing Jews and they turn off all the camps, then it's fine. Then it's okay then.
That within the process of a negotiation, that you can make stipulations. So we can go down the list of all the horrors of Nazi Germany, and they are endless, right? We can go down that list, and we can say, well, these things that you are doing are simply unacceptable.
I mean,
and then they'll stop, and then we'll be okay afterwards, keeping them. They can still stay in power. I think the majority of people around the planet. Didn't we try this leading up to Germany? Is like making small, would you even say appeasements to them, and it didn't seem to work very well.
I don't know that history, so I'm not going to speak on that. Sorry.
Okay. Well, there was pretty sure Churchill and a bunch of other people in.
I know they had the. I know
bitched out.
I thought the pieces were coming in the other direction.
Germany wants a little bit of territory. They want to invade a little bit. Like, maybe we just let them do a little bit. Maybe they'll.
No, but that was the other direction. Hold on, that was the other direction. I don't.
Or Chamberlain, sorry.
Yeah, they were making concessions in the other direction. So, from my understanding, right?
Yeah, but in the general thing is that, like, appeasing a group of people they just want to, like, kill and murder and conquer is generally not. I don't know historically if there's precedent for that ever working.
Isn't that just the Japanese? Isn't that very similar to what the Japanese believed? And obviously, the scale of the atrocities is much bigger on the Nazi side, right? But the Japanese also committed tons of atrocities, terrible massacres. And we
firebombed almost every large city and then nuked the other two in Japan, invaded them, dismantled the entire fucking government, and then.
Right. Okay. But again, we didn't continue bombing until they were like, it was like rubble, right? At some point,
until they essentially did an unconditional surrender, basically, right?
Right. Yeah. So and like I said earlier, I agree that with the goal of dismantling Hamas.
Yeah, but Hamas is not surrendering. They want to negotiate. Why would you negotiate with a foe you can clearly defeat militarily, and that has dedicated themselves to the destruction of you? Why would you ever negotiate with them?
Well, I think if we put into the context where I think you said earlier that Hamas is like you can't really. They have like an ideological goal. They have this hatred of Jews and etc. So it's very difficult to like actually negotiate with these people in any context. So understanding that, it doesn't seem to me to make sense to have them even be the people that you would negotiate with for anything beyond like getting the hostages back, right? It wouldn't make sense to say to try to find some other leader, some other organization within Gaza that you can negotiate with for a post-war peace. Because yeah, I don't. Given that it's within Hamas's interest to continue the war, than to have more civilians killed, I don't think they're the ones that should be that we should look to for any kind of reasonable negotiations. And my understanding is that there have been attempts at talks, right, so far, and attempts at coming up with a deal to hand over the hostages, and they've been rejected for a multitude of reasons. Reason one is like I think Israel was offering a 2-month ceasefire, and the release of Palestinian prisoners, some Palestinian prisoners, over in stages over like a 2-month period, and that was rejected because what Hamas is demanding is that Israel leaves first, right? Pulls out of the area, and then and has a ceasefire, and then they'll give over the hostages, which I agree that's pretty unreasonable for Israel to accept that, right? So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that if we're talking about like negotiations long term, it doesn't seem like Hamas is the group to do that with, given that it's within their interest to continue the conflict, right? So, I mean, my question, I guess, to both of you is, if we all agree that Hamas post-war should not be in charge, cannot be in charge, if there's to be any lasting peace, when do we when should we encourage Israel, or I mean, I'm in the United States. All I can do is like advocate for positions and hope it affects politics in some way. I'm just a dude in California. But when do you think people should start pushing for them to shift the political focus away from Hamas and away from that terrible organization to some other group, some other leader?
Once Hamas is no longer in
groups
power.
that might have been. I'm sorry, what?
Once Hamas is no longer in power.
Okay, but no longer in power equals like what?
No more operational capacity, doesn't administer to any of the territory anymore, can't conduct operations.
Okay, so at whatever point Israel decides that's the case. Okay, well, I mean, so essentially what you're saying is, I think, is that they keep bombing them, keep up the war until they feel like Hamas has lost enough capacity to function, and at that point they find somebody else to deal with. But I don't know how they get to that point and still get the hostages, right? It seems like if you're going to keep bombing until you get to the point where Hamas loses all ability to function, these hostages are going to die.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, yeah, that makes sense. And actually, that actually might be, this is awful, but it might be like long-term better, right? Because, I agree that it is not unreasonable, but it'd be very difficult to expect Israel to want to negotiate with this organization, and if in any capacity, right? And for that negotiation to last, right? So, yeah, and if you need to sacrifice these, 100, 200, 300 people to achieve that, to get to the point where this organization isn't in control anymore, maybe that's better. Maybe that makes sense.
Okay. Feelings on that.
Yeah,
Feelings?
I get it.
But I mean, okay, just
Well, so like, because I don't know how you get to that point, right? Because we all agree that Hamas shouldn't be in charge anymore. How do you get there? If you're going to stop bombing so that Hamas can turn over the hostages?
say that last part again. I'm sorry.
So how do you get to the point where they're no longer in control? They no longer have power. If the ceasefire leads to them retaining that control, because I'm assuming if there were some kind of deal, it would involve not just turning over the hostages, but it would involve like a multiple month ceasefire, and they probably want some of their Palestinian prisoners released, and then what? Do they expect Israel to not just go back to bombing them? Of course, that's probably going to happen. I think Israel will be justified in doing that. Right, so like I think at some point we need to there needs to be like a separation between like Hamas and the people and the Palestinian people in Gaza. There needs to be some kind of like dividing line put in there.
Sure, I think there is should be a separation, as I've repeated many times before that. Like I don't think that Hamas is the leader in the end. Like, there's no future that I see where Hamas, like as an organization, survives, and certainly not one where there is peace. Okay, however we're defining that, but one way would be through that ceasefire, right? So you have a ceasefire where the hostages are exchanged, the bombs stop dropping, and we can try to put some semblance of order within Gaza, and then we put credible actions on the table for a credible path on the table for peace. That, like,
what motivation does Israel have, from their perspective, to negotiate with Hamas when they can destroy them? Why would they? Why should they?
Because the other path, right, is either ethnic cleansing, which will be bad for Israel, like the rest of the world watching ethnic cleansing happening. I hope at some point that enough deaths will be enough, right? So whether it's your magic 40K number or it's 100,000 or whatever, that at some point the world will step in. At some point, Israel will lose that level of support. So for
up to the point of them losing
reasons,
international support,
or also that there's the consequences lead us up of them not bombing, lead us up to a regional war, and they want to avoid that regional war. And what will guarantee that? If there's an ethnic cleansing, or almost guarantee it, if there's an ethnic cleansing happening. So these are all reasons, selfishly, that the Israelis might not want to go through with that. So
okay, so you agree then that they should operate up to their maximum operational capacity as long as they don't lose regional support?
Of course not. I don't know why.
Then I don't know why you. Then why are you making that argument then? So then Israel has no reason why they should negotiate then with Hamas. They should just. What is your reason?
Because you don't know when that moment is. You don't actually know that moment.
What do you mean?
Is.
Of course you do. Leaders are in constant communication, checking civilian death numbers and where populations are at or whatever for this type of stuff.
No. They'll figure out the death numbers, but you don't know what's the tipping point, right? What's the tipping point? You can see that maybe things like, let's pretend like my world was closer than reality here, right? You can see that there's a point where the U.S. is going to drop support.
But you would stop before that point. It's not going to happen randomly.
But you don't know. Like I don't know.
Yes, I do know. I'm saying that very confidently. It's not going to be like one day the whole world flips the switch, like, oh, all of us are fighting Israel.
I didn't say that. Right? And why I used an example of one organization being the U.S. Right? Like you can see that you're losing.
This whole line of argumentation is worthless. You keep saying that everybody might turn against them. We agree that Israel should stop before the rest of the world turns against them. There's going to be a lead up to
Agreed.
that. Yes. But then I asked you, is that then the only thing that's limiting you with Israel? Of course it's not. You don't believe in what you just said. Because then I asked you, do you think that Israel should operate in its full operational capacity as long as they're not losing regional allies or partners? And you said, well, of course not. So obviously there's something else there. So I don't know why you're bringing this point up.
Because personally, it's because I don't want to see the deaths of innocent Palestinians. That's why, personally, I don't want that. I kind of care about these things, about the death of civilians.
But also, like, if you were to get rid of Hamas, right? What are you doing? If you were to get rid of Hamas, and
why don't you? If you want civilians not to die, then why isn't the onus on Hamas, the people that administer to the region, to stop the fighting?
It is, but we've already established they're fucking crazy. They're
then that's their fault. That's their country then. Then they can figure it out.
It's their fault. I understand it's the fault of Hamas.
Well, hold on, I understand you do, but
I don't think that's the fault of...
But Prime doesn't seem to think that. He seems to think it's all on Israel.
I don't think it's all on... Dude, I don't think it's all on Israel. I don't know how many times I have to say this. I don't think it's all on Israel. I think you have to both sit down at the table. You're saying that, like, there is this starting point. Here is the starting point of peace, right? And the starting point is Hamas, according to you, deciding to voluntarily dismantle, or maybe not voluntarily, like under coercion, dismantle. I'm saying that, like, that or won't happen with these people that you think, especially if you think that they are so unreasonable, Hamas, that they're so crazy, they're so radicalized, that won't happen. But a more viable path is simply returning the hostages and then stopping the bombing, right? So instituting a ceasefire. That is a far more plausible scenario than
but
Hamas.
The problem is
under coercion.
What you're advocating for is immoral. I don't know why we would say Israel no longer has a right to conduct military operations against Hamas. Where are you getting that from?
So I'm not trying. Here's the thing. Did I say I don't have the right? Did I say that?
Oh,
At
then
any
if they have
point.
the right, then we have no disagreement. Israel has a right to conduct military operations. You're just talking about what you would like in a perfect prime world.
No. Because I'm not arguing on the right. Because I don't give a fuck about that. I don't understand why you.
Then what do you give a fuck about? What are you trying to optimize here?
Me personally, if you're asking me personally, what I care about is the end of civilian deaths on both sides.
This is not a calculation in war.
Hold on, but you're asking me what I want. You're asking me what I want.
Fine. But
so that's what I want.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
But that's different from what I'm talking about.
Okay, gotcha. But then you should clearly state that your position is ahistorical, not considered by any country in the entire world, and has no bearing on geopolitics ever. This is literally the Twitter position of I just want whatever reduces in the short term civilian deaths. That's not how war has ever been conducted in the history of all of mankind.
So hold on. You ask me what I want.
Okay, I understand now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right.
Your position is just completely unreasonable. But if it's what you personally want,
it's not completely unreasonable. How is it completely unreasonable?
I just said it because it's ahistorical, because nobody in the history of all of warfare kind ever conducts war like this.
No, but your argument rests on justified, right? But Israel is justified to do this.
Correct.
The Palestinians aren't justified to do that.
Correct.
But that's not how warfare works.
That is how it works. That's literally how it works.
Because of
they're all justified from their own perspectives.
No, it's not just from your own perspective. This is why people go to the UN and they drop Security Council resolutions, and why they get support from international partners, because moral justification for conflicts is literally part of why people go to war and get support internationally for what they're doing. Of course, justification is important. That's why people are sanctioning Russia more than Ukraine for the war
are justified from their own perspectives.
What?
The Palestinians the Gazans who were so enraged by the history of oppression that they dealt with, right? That they personally have heard stories of the family members, and
I understand that you can make those arguments, but do you genuinely believe? But we're not them.
You say make those arguments, but we're humans. We can understand how other human beings are going to react to conflict and to brutality. It's not good, but it's a. Okay, you need to care, I think, if you give a fuck about long-term peace in the region.
No,
you need to understand
you
these
don't
are
want
humans,
long-term peace.
and
You
humans
want
are going to react a certain way to turmoil, to conflict, etc. You can't just write that off and expect them to be robots.
What do you think leads to long-term peace?
Long-term, I think that the one-state solution is the only viable option.
No, on a macro level. What do you think leads to long-term peace?
What do you mean? What do you mean by the macro level?
Like in the world.
In the world.
I feel like long-term peace is when you have stable governments, strong economies, and you've got people that are willing to consider international opinion, broadly speaking, with other stable trading countries. I think that these are the things that, broadly speaking, lead to long-term peace. I don't think reduction of civilian casualties at all costs, I don't think that leads to long-term peace. Because reduction of civilian casualties at all costs is literally... I don't know why my shit keeps changing. It's because of this fucking StreamYard program, that's why. Reduction of civilian casualties at all costs is literally a tit-for-tat game that gets taken advantage of by groups like the Houthis or by groups like Hamas.
Well, it's a good thing neither of us are supporting that. Nobody said that.
Then why, if you're not supporting that, then why in the fuck would you ever... then why would you support Israel not conducting whatever military operation they feel they need to eliminate Hamas?
Because at some point, even if they were to eliminate Hamas, if that requires or leads to the killing or the displacement of hundreds of thousands or millions of civilians, there's going to be a new Hamas in 10, 15, 20 years. It'll just happen all over again. Okay. So if you give a fuck long term about actual
No. I'm sorry.
You need to care about the way that humans will react to this conflict.
I understand what you're saying. Okay. The reason why this doesn't work is because the entire bro. Oh my god. Okay, my mic is gonna keep on crazy because this is dog shit fucking program. Okay, because you guys want to use StreamYard. Okay, it's your fault. All right.
I got in touch with the Iranian CIA and I'm fucking
clearly okay because I think it automatically adjusts my mic.
You can use go into the audio settings. The settings at the bottom, right? The settings.
Yeah, I see it. I uncheck the automatically adjust, but it still does it. Like I don't.
And echo cancellation.
I feel like these are debate tactics.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck is this.
My part. It gives me an advantage.
All right, testing. Okay, we'll see if this fucks it up. Okay. Hold on. If
it happens again, we can just move to Discord, right? I don't care.
No, it's fine. I got it. Okay. Oh my god, now my mic is so fucking loud. Hello. Test.
It makes you sound more manly when you're loud. It's fine.
Yeah.
You sound like an authority figure when you're loud.
More authoritative. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Okay. What was it? Ceasefire with...
You were explaining. I was gonna be an asshole. You're explaining why I'm still gonna be an asshole. Why we should expect Palestinians to be robots and not give a fuck about the emotional, human cost of Israel's war against Hamas.
Okay, if they can't put down weapons and start building a stable society or country. Oh, I remember what I was saying. You guys keep talking about this theoretical world, this mythical world where future Palestinians are being radicalized against Israel. What you're missing is that Palestinians are already radicalized against Israel. They already all want the one-state solution. They already want to kick all the Israeli people out. There is zero incentive for Israel to do anything to help this population not hate them because they already view the population as already hating them. And they basically already do.
That's
supported by widespread polling data from all of the most reputable polling that's done in the region.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Okay.
But I think that the way you deal with that is you, like I said earlier, attack the underlying reasons the hatred is there, right? And I think one of those underlying reasons is going to be civilian deaths in like Israel's attacks against Hamas. That I agree, we're justified. It's totally reasonable if you're getting shot at with fucking rockets to blow up the people shooting rockets at you. I get it. Right, but that is obviously going to lead, if you're killing a lot of civilians in this, to anger within the population, and
I don't think
to more people wanting to join that organization to fight you.
Okay, what were they fighting for 40 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 60 years ago, or 70 years ago? If they've been fighting constantly for 80 years, why are we pretending like the reason for the fighting is because of this thing now?
Why are you pretending that these are the same people with the same reasons?
Because it's the same type of conflict that's been going on for essentially 80 years. It hasn't really changed much in nature or character.
80 years ago, you had a totally different set of people, different experiences, fighting for, I'm sure, different reasons. Now you have this ongoing antagonism from the Israeli state, ongoing incitement from Iran, from all these other surrounding Arab countries, and from groups like Hamas. These are it's a different set of people, right?
And
so I don't
Arab
think
countries trying to go away from them, right? Like Saudi Arabia.
So I don't think it makes sense to say, well, 80 years this thing happened, so why weren't they doing this? Well, it's a different group of people. They weren't doing that then. Right. I think today there are legitimate grievances from a lot of the Palestinians on the ground against Israel. Right. And you need to deal with those grievances if you actually want to seek peace long term.
Are they legitimate grievances?
Yeah.
Like what?
We can look to the West Bank, which I think you've said repeatedly that you think is like indefensible, right? That Israel's behavior on the West Bank, the settlers.
No, I said it was indefensible. I just disagree with the settlements encroaching. I think it's bad. I think Israel should probably stop it. But indefensible? I mean, I don't know. If their view of the Palestinians is they're just going to engage in warfare continuously until they can kill all the Israeli people, then I mean, like asking Israel to stop the settlements or whatever is basically asking for a one-sided concession that, like, why would you even expect them to do it?
Wait, but when they have peace in the West Bank, you still have these settlers going in, and most of these people are like the religious right-wing Israelis.
Sure, they are. But like settlement expansion largely stopped, ironically enough, with Netanyahu even as prime minister, from like 95 or from basically after the Oslo Accords, and it still didn't result in a long-term peace agreement because it felt like the Palestinians and Arafat just wanted more territory. They just wanted to keep fighting for the one-state solution. So I don't know why they would ever assume that like this is helpful or that the settlements need to stop. They pulled out all the settlements from the Gaza Strip. That's still like one of the most violent regions. What is the incentive for Israel to stop? Why would you? These people are going to hate us and want to kill us and fight against us infinitely anyway. Why the fuck would we stop expanding our stuff?
Okay, so you're saying that they shouldn't do anything about the underlying reasons, with the antagonism that might be driving radicalism or violence toward Israel. They should continue the things that are antagonizing these Palestinians, even Palestinians who might not support Hamas or might not be just have like a Jew hatred.
We need to understand this, okay? And this is, if we disagree on this, we can just disagree on this. That's fine, but it fundamentally hampers our ability to have a conversation. You guys are both under the assumption that 90% plus of the Palestinian hatred for Israel is just due to Israeli antagonism today. I think that's probably accounts for less than 15%. That's the issue. I think it's a minor reason. When you've got a country that has been in conflict for 80 years, and then one party, the Palestinians, have been supported by all the other people to be in that conflict for basically the entire time, to say that magically at some point, like what year did it switch to the oppression was the reason why Palestinians wanted to kill Israeli people? Like what was the year or time period where that magical switch happened? Rather than it was just a continuation of all the same grievances they've always had.
There doesn't have to be, I don't know why you're making this. So there doesn't have to be a year, right? Like me, I'm a kid. I'm bored in Gaza. I don't know. Let's say West Bank, right? I'm bored within the West Bank. I come into the world, thinking everyone's fun and great. I'll come up and I'll hug them and whatever the fuck, right? But as I grow up, I recognize there's differences and how people are treated. I see that there's these other group of people who can come into the neighborhood where I live and where who can abuse the people that I love, right? And they have no consequences, right? Now, I might not be aware of the history. Maybe my parents told me about it, maybe it didn't. But if I see my friends getting arrested for no reason, if I see people being killed, if I see houses being bulldozed at, then me, right, being born in the 1980s, in the 1990s, the 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, right, I might have a reason, right, whether you think it's legitimate or illegitimate, I might have a reason to believe that I am being oppressed. And from there, that will dictate my actions. Not everyone, not every person studies, even within the conflict, right? Within any conflict, the Palestinians or the Jews have a deep understanding of the history of the peace deal.
This type of like ultimately like individually morally relativistic argument just fails completely. Because if you want to go down this route, then fine, then I'll just go down the Israeli route. Well, let's say I was born in Israel and I thought that we were cool and I thought that everybody loved each other, and then I grow up and I find out, wow, there's one community of people that has been launching rockets into us for 25 years, even though they keep saying they don't have enough money to, fuel their hospitals or their population, or like, wow, we're existing in this region where the UN keeps telling us that we're doing wrong thing after wrong thing, even though like the people who are supposedly peaceful to us to the east literally have a martyr fund to support the families of people that commit, fucking jihad against us or whatever the fuck the shit is. Like, oh man, like, there are other countries around this region that are also like supporting, like shooting missiles at us. Like, holy fuck, like all the way over in Yemen, they're shooting missiles at us. Oh my God, Hezbollah is like shooting rockets at us from neighboring countries, right? So now I feel like I should be fighting against these people forever.
Yeah. It's totally reasonable, understandable.
No. That's not reasonable. That's why we don't use moral relativism when we judge people on the world stage. That's why we try to carve out like what we think is like right or wrong, and we try to find a side that's more righteous to support, and then we go that way. Otherwise, everybody's got reasons to do everything. It doesn't mean anything.
Destiny. Me and Dooby and I aren't trying to judge them, right? I'm not trying to, in this moment, judge the Israelis. I might have my own opinions, but like that doesn't matter. I'm looking for a path to peace. How do I actually get there? I can understand that there's reasons, whether I think they're legitimate or not, right? Let's say like I was totally in the bag for Palestinians, and I wanted some sort of equitable solution for them, and I thought like the Israelis were evil, right? But I can still understand that those evil Israelis like have a reason to have gotten there, because I don't think they're inhuman animals in the end, right? I can understand they have justifications and they have demands that must be met, right? That's the only way it's going to happen. I can get that. I don't know why you can't get that for the other side. I'm simply saying.
So I think
I've already got it for the other side. This is the argument that I make the whole time. Both sides think that fighting infinitely is going to achieve some end for them. One side is delusional. And the sooner Palestinians realize that they're delusional and continuing conflict with Israel, the sooner maybe they can come to the table and try to make some sort of peaceful agreement. But as long as they want to continue fighting, Israel, like I said in the very beginning, I said that Israel dynamically responds to the situations around them. If the surrounding Arabs want peace, they take peace. If they want to fight, then they fight and they win. That's what Israel does. So if the Palestinians want to continue to fight, Israel will keep fighting and expanding their territory. Well, stop.
It doesn't matter if they're delusional. It doesn't matter. You seem to think that means anything to anyone, that they're delusional.
As an outsider, right? Third party trying to evaluate which side we ought to support, it does matter who's delusional.
I'm not trying to support.
Again, so you don't support either side? Then you don't choose one side or the other? You have no preference?
I'm saying I've said this, audience members. I hope you hear this, right? I hope I'm not being. I feel like I'm being gaslit here, because I've said it multiple times. Is that like when looking at this peace deal, I think it's best to step back, right, and not necessarily look at it from one side or the other, right? I have my preferences. I do have my personal preferences. You know I have my personal preferences.
Wait, then how do you decide who's in the right in a conflict and who you want to support?
I don't have to.
Wait, then how do you figure out what the steps are to resolve a particular conflict?
I don't think it makes sense to say that.
No, wait. I want to hear that. I want to hear this. In a world where you have no preference whatsoever about who's right or wrong, how do you decide which side to support in a conflict?
I'm not trying, because Destiny. I can. Okay, let me try. I guess I don't have the words for this. Maybe I don't.
Okay, easy. We're using South Africa so much. Who do you support? Do you support the ANC or do you support the apartheid South African government? Which one would you have supported?
Friend. Wait, hold on. So even in that, just really quickly, Pam. So even in that conflict, right, or that instance of the South Africa, you had white South Africans, white farmers, white.
Please don't say you've got all these people just for this. I know that. I don't care. I'm asking you, who do you support?
Listen.
I know, but you're going to waste like 10 minutes talking about everybody has their reasons for why they want to. I don't care.
What I would support is the removal of the apartheid system.
There you go. So you do have a support.
One second. What I support in Israel and Palestine is the end to the conflict, the end of violence, right, between these two groups of people.
No, stop. No, that's not true. Stop.
Actually,
Jimmy, you're lying. Stop lying. Because you don't support peace. Okay? You support a just resolution. If I would have told you, hey, by the way, if you want peace in South Africa, ANC needs to stop fighting.
That's extremely pedantic, please.
No!
If you're going to say, oh, well, you don't support, if you said that you support peace, that's not true because you wouldn't support peace if it meant murdering everybody that's against peace. That's ridiculous. Of course, I'm not saying that.
It's important. It is important because the same type of argument that you're talking about was literally one of the largest arguments against civil rights. It was an uneasy peace that was forced upon the black man in the United States, okay, said by our famous, lovely person, Martin Luther King Jr., right? The idea of just like obsessing over peace was literally one of the chief complaints of civil rights people. Hold on, you just said, oh God, what part did I just say that you don't understand? And I can say back slower to you.
The issue with that, because the issue, I understand what you're saying. I just think it's stupid. Because the issue with that comparison, the issue with that comparison is that even in the case of civil rights, right? So I would say that things like Jim Crow, things that are creating an unequal system in the United States, long term are actually detrimental to any kind of peace. You can't have a peace long term if this is the case.
Okay, that's an amazing point. That's why earlier, when I asked this exact question, what you just said, I agree with you 1,000,000,000%. That's why I said, what do you think leads to long-term peace on the macro level? And my answer was like, economically prosperous, stable nations that are trading with other countries on a broad level. That was my answer. But your guys' answer, or at the very least, Prime's answer, was the reduction of civilian casualties. And that isn't a way towards peace. That's why I then gave the example of, would you make peace with Nazi Germany? Would you make peace with...
That's not what I said.
Okay.
That's not what I said.
Okay, so then we all agree then that, like, peace is irrelevant. No one cares about peace. What we really care about is justice. That's what we care about, right?
No.
Okay, what do you care about then?
I care about let me try this again. So justice, right? There wasn't justice that happened after the end of slavery, right? Like the slaves weren't compensated for their bondage, right? That they weren't made whole.
But it was more just than where we came from.
It was an increase, yes.
Okay.
And within a peace agreement, you can have a movement towards justice,
yes,
right?
Yes, correct.
Oftentimes that is the case, that you can have movement towards justice.
Yep.
But many times in peace deals, like there are hard feelings left on one side or the other.
Yep.
It simply is the case, right? Yeah. Okay. Right. So I'm saying that rather than get yourself mired within the individual conflicts, within the individual justifications, you can simply recognize that there are reasons for people fighting, and that if you address them, right, try to address them in as equitable fashion as you can, then you can have a path towards peace.
When you say equitable, the implication there is that the demands are reasonable. And you can't just say you want peace, it has to be a just peace. Because if you want peace, then you would have agreed with the extremist position I led out earlier, that what you really want is just a mass ethnic cleansing, because nothing would lead to peace in Israel-Palestine quicker than a mass ethnic cleansing.
Was it a just peace in South Africa, right? After the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, in case people don't know, right? In the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, you had people getting amnesty, right? People within both the apartheid government and the anti-apartheid side.
That's fine. We get it. Go ahead.
No, but I'm going to say it, right?
Let me summarize the whole 5-minute ramble you're about it. Was it peace when some people that were on the bad guy's side ended up getting amnesty when they should have been held accountable? And was that peaceful?
I'm not doing a 5-minute ramble.
Oh my God.
I was going to do a 20-second ramble. If you let me get past this. So the point is that like they presented themselves in front of the council, and what they did, how that process worked, is that individuals stated their crimes, right? Crimes that happened within a particular time period for the purposes of a political party, right? To advance their political aims, right? But what they didn't have to do, is say, "I'm sorry." You actually didn't have to. You just could roll up in there, stated, "Yeah, I killed a fuck ton of black people, and let me tell you how I tortured each and every one of them, and maybe I'm even glad about it," right? But that's all you had to do, was state that. So, was it just the question I'm asking you? See, didn't take 5 minutes. Was it just a just peace when those people got amnesty? They didn't when they weren't put in, didn't have jail time, or they weren't executed, or they weren't hanged. Was that a just peace?
It was more just than what came before, and the goal is steps towards justice.
Indeed. Agreed.
Leaving Hamas or having a Palestinian group of people that want to kill you and leaving them there are not steps towards justice.
But I said I agreed. Okay, I don't have to tell you because.
Then what are our disagreements right now? Then you tell me what our disagreements are.
No. What did I, just before then? What did I say about Hamas? What are my feelings about Hamas?
You said that I think you wanted them removed. I'm not entirely sure, but then you also said you wanted a ceasefire, so I'm not entirely sure. I don't actually know what your position is because I feel like you said that. Have you said that Israel is justified in destroying Hamas? Have you said that?
Yeah.
Have you said that?
I said.
No, wait, answer this.
Yes.
Have you said that? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Have you also said that you want a ceasefire?
Yes, I want a ceasefire. I'm saying that there are steps towards that.
Then what did I just say that was so funny? Because you wanted two things that are entirely contradictory.
No, yeah, sure. What was so funny is that you were unsure. When I
said I was unsure because you have contradictory positions that don't make any sense. You want to ceasefire with a terrorist org, but you also think that Israel is justified in destroying that terrorist organization. How are these two positions? Reconcile these two positions for me. How do these both make sense?
I'll get that in a second. When this is made to abad, someone out there, please, because
how do these two positions make sense?
No, hold on. DGG, right? I want you to count out how many times I stated my position on Hamas. Please, put a counter there so people can fucking know how many times I've said it. Thank you. Okay. So, what was your question again? Sorry, I was filled with righteous outrage. Go ahead.
How can you reconcile the destruction of Hamas with also a ceasefire?
Destruction of Hamas, also ceasefire.
Okay, you don't even understand your own position. Why are you laughing at me for not understanding your position then? Okay, you can't even literally explain it.
Hold on.
Jesus.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Stephen. I took a moment to think about my answer. I do apologize. I didn't fire off the hip. Oh my god. So
you guys are hot when you scream at each other.
I mean, I'm erect. I'm fully erect. So. And he's doing what he needs to do to calm down. It's great. But anyway, so the reason why, so I'm saying that the path to peace, the one that actually works out in the long run, is one where Hamas disappears, right? And
so then why would you have a ceasefire? I don't understand that. How would you do a ceasefire if you want Hamas to disappear?
Ceasefire. You want Hamas to disappear? Yeah, you think that that it's impossible to dismantle Hamas, fully degrade their operations, so out like a straight up ethnic cleansing. That seems to be my opinion here.
What? I just asked you, how can you get Hamas to disappear if you do a ceasefire with them?
No, you asked me a second question.
No, that's the question I'm asking right now. How do you get Hamas to disappear if you want a ceasefire? I'm trying to reconcile your two positions where you say we should get rid of Hamas completely, but we should also do a ceasefire. I don't know how these two positions are not contradictory.
Sure. Okay. All right. I'll state it because I've stated this before. I'll say it again. No
Thank you.
Right?
Okay.
Sure. Okay. You start with this. You start with the ceasefire. Okay. You start with the ceasefire, and then you can say that this ceasefire is dependent on peace talks, right? And good faith steps that must be taken on both sides to achieve solid negotiations. So anyway, right? These negotiations would include, because as I've said many times, Hamas being either demilitarized or completely.
And you think Hamas would agree to a peace talk where the terrorist group Hamas, who wants to destroy all of Israel, is going to demilitarize?
If there is a credible path to peace, yeah, there might be a possibility. Yeah, because
even though all the polling data shows that Palestinians actually want to fight with Israelis.
And where did I think? Where do you think? I think that polling comes from, right? What are the reasons behind that polling? I've stated it many times.
Yeah, it's ahistorical and baseless. The answer is because they want to have
what was it?
What did you think? It's because of the conditions that they're subject to.
Not just that, right? There was another.
And the humiliation.
No. It
and
was
the fact that there wasn't a reasonable road to peace.
Yes, there's no reasonable road to peace, and that in any conflict, if there's no reasonable road to peace, people are just going to want to fight.
Yeah, but the road to peace, the peace they want, is them having a one-state solution.
There was more appetite at some point in time in Israel. Okay, there was more appetite for peace, right? Like,
okay, hold on. I don't know why we're talking about. Okay, this is so simple.
But at some point there was.
Don't care.
There was a point.
Listen, do you think right now that the majority of Palestinians want a one-state solution or a two-state solution?
I'm saying that it doesn't actually matter.
It doesn't matter what they want when you're trying to negotiate peace?
I'm saying that, like, it doesn't matter, like, what they want if there is no path to peace, right? Like, I can want.
No, you keep saying.
A two-state.
I'm sorry. Hold on. You're so American-brained right now. Okay. You keep saying this path to peace because for you in America, the status quo works. So when there's no violence, it's good. That's the path to peace. But the problem is in the Middle East with Israel and Palestine, there is not a path. Nobody cares about peace over there. They want justice. And in the Palestinian eyes, their perception of justice is a one-state solution. You keep saying path to peace because as a Westerner, the only thing that your eyes can ever fucking perceive are civilian casualties. That's the only thing you see. You don't see anything else besides that.
No,
so I'm asking you again, if there's a group of people and they want a one-state solution, how do you ever get on a path to peace when their path to perceived peace is directly in conflict with the Israeli path to peace? How do you resolve that?
You show good faith. All right. So I'll end this soon because clearly we just can't get past.
Because you want to engage with the question.
No, I have engaged with the question. Destiny, no, you're just being obtuse. You just are pretending that I haven't said what I've said multiple times. That I haven't stated my points.
Okay.
Many times.
Sorry.
Like,
tell me. Okay. So go ahead. Okay. So
that's okay.
Path to peace. Tell me how do we do the path to peace for Palestinians when that directly conflicts with the path to peace for Israelis? When Israel wants a country and Palestinians don't want them to have a country, how do you reconcile these two positions? Or do you think it will magically change if Israel just eases up on the blockade?
I'm saying that Israel, that the path that Israel wants to take to achieve their goals has costs that they might not be willing to bear. That includes, like from like an ethnic cleansing standpoint, a loss of international support and possibly regional.
Hold on. Everything you're just saying is not true. So go to the next point. Because so far, Israel has dramatically improved its position in the world over the past 80 years. Yeah. Excuse me.
Sorry. No, I'm talking about since October 7th, and that this is what I'm.
It's a road bump. I don't think many people will care.
You don't think many people will care?
Oh no, you don't think people would really care if they actually carried out an ethnic cleansing?
If they actually had a full ethnic cleansing, they probably would care, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, so that's what I was referring to, right? Like,
oh well, that's not happening. So I don't know. We would refer to something that's not happening. But I think right now,
but you're saying it's a fine thing that they go through ethnic cleansing. Like if the Hamas, right, that you say is completely who's completely unwilling and unable to come to negotiations or to do anything that would lead to a ceasefire, right? Like in your opinion, that this organization that are completely incapable of doing that, then you just kill them all, right? Then just kill them all. You've stated that many times.
If they want to fight to the bitter end, then they are allowed to fight to their bitter end. That's their right as Palestinians. If they want to do it, knock themselves out, I guess. But I don't know why we would force Israel to acquiesce to them. Most of the Middle East doesn't even support the Palestinian cause right now.
Okay, I feel like you're not drawing the distinction, right? So I think we all agree, Hamas, unreasonable, bad. Okay. I don't think there's any reason to believe that the Palestinians, as a group, or in Gaza, would want to fight to the bitter end.
They literally do. They literally said that okay, that's fine if you don't believe that, but most of the polling data, even from before October 7th, shows that Palestinians believe that they should continue. Yes, they want to fight.
Yeah. Okay,
most of the Palestinians still support the October 7th attacks. It's like 82% of the West Bank. It's 57% of the Gaza Strip.
But as Prem laid out earlier, right, so one of the contributing factors to this could be that they don't believe that there's a political path to peace, right? And given that I think you agree that the right-wing push in Israel for the last couple of decades, and Netanyahu himself, none of these people actually want peace because the status quo benefits them. If that is the case, if the people on the other side of the table from these Palestinians who might want peace don't actually want peace.
You've got to, okay, I'm sorry, we have to stop. Okay, new rule for this debate. We have to stop using the word peace because I don't know if you guys, I don't know it doesn't mean anything, okay? Nobody wants peace here. They want a one-state solution. That's what they want. They don't want peace. The Palestinians don't want peace.
Yeah, that's peace. That long term, that's peace.
Yes,
yeah.
is a one-state solution, which then in direct conflict with
is peace.
Well, no, well, and because they don't really want the Jewish people from the Israeli country to live there either, or at the very least they want to control it. What do you mean that's not true?
Okay, hold on. So, okay, to be clear, when I say that's not true, I mean I'm not saying that I don't want the Israeli Jews to live there, right? I'm totally fine with them living there. I'm just saying they should live there as equals with the Palestinian Arabs, right, in a single state. And obviously that's a long-term project, and I agree, farther off than any kind of two-state solution. Though, like I said earlier, I do think that seems to me to be the only way to have like a lasting peace long-term, because I think anything else is going to be a powder keg.
What is a lasting peace long-term? It's the one-state solution that you have no evidence to work, when there's been mass violence from Palestinians towards Israeli citizens, when Palestinians don't even want literally, you're like, it is the most Western idea ever that you want to impose a solution that neither side of these people want. None of them want this. And you're saying this is what they really do want. Like,
when in the polls that you've seen where they call for a one state, like a single Palestinian state, I think you said that most Palestinians support this, right? A single state. Do those polls also say that they want to expel the Jews?
My understanding is they don't want equal rights for Jewish and Muslim citizens. I can try and find the this poll. I don't know if it was in the most recent
my
one.
Understanding. Yeah, because my understanding is that's not true, and that what they do want is one man, one vote, and the reason the Israelis don't want this is because they want to maintain their ethno state for reasons you could say legitimate or illegitimate. I don't think the ethno state is legitimate. But
that's fine, even though every single other country in that region maintains an ethno state. But okay.
No, it's not the same.
It absolutely is the same. What do you mean it's not the same? Wait, how is it not the same?
It's absolutely not the same. Oh no, so the Jews are an ethno-religious group, plopped down with an ethno-state, plopped down in an area where the demographic reality, it makes that ethno-state impossible to maintain without keeping people out of the fucking country, right? For a long, people right next door to you, they can't immigrate, they can't come back home because of just the demographics. So I think long-term Israel's going to need to soften on that or let go of that for there to be peace, because this is one of the driving factors behind the conflict.
Is that what is one of the driving factors?
That they're attempting to maintain an ethno state, an ethnic majority within Israel.
No. That has nothing to do with that is not a driving factor for the conflict. That's a non-factor.
Why would you think that?
Why would it be?
Okay. So if you, I guess think it through, right? So there's an ethno-supremacist ideology.
What ethno-supremacist? Where are all these terms coming from? What?
Okay.
Jews have one country? How many countries do Muslims have? Like 60 plus? What do you mean ethno-supremacist?
Irrelevant. Yeah, hold on. So it's coming from the religion, right? So the religious right in Israel is growing in power. There is an ethnocentric or ethno-supremacist ideology built into that religion.
Okay, I don't think I don't even know theologically if that's true.
I think it is. And
I'm almost positive it's not. I'm pretty sure that I don't think that, for instance, like as part of Judaism, I don't think you believe that non-Jewish people are all condemned to hell. In Islam, you actually have separate dhimmi status for people that aren't part of your religion. They live as like separate citizens, arguably, depending on what country you're living in. I'm not like I said before, I'm probably more Islamophobic than you are. Okay, I'm not a fan of Islam or Christianity or Judaism, but I think what tends to happen is people tend to minimize the impact of the religious right in Israel and what that religion actually is, right? So what these beliefs are. There is absolutely built into Judaism a separation between Jews and non-Jews, and there are rules for what can happen with Jews and rules for what can happen with non-Jews. And it's not as simple as we're going to keep to ourselves. There are rules about that set them above non-Jews and spiritually in terms of their covenant with God. I'm sorry, this is a delusional position. You're telling me that like the religion of Islam, okay, that is like part of its stated goal, tries to convert as many people arguably as possible, that is engaged in terrorist attacks all over the fucking country, that has 60 plus countries and half of them fucking have forms of Sharia law or theocratic regimes, and then you're going to say those people are really upset that there's an ethno-supremacist group who are the Jews, who haven't even recovered from their post-Holocaust numbers, who are pogromed and fucking murdered all over the fucking world just for being Jewish, okay, who had to flee almost every single Arab country after every single successive Arab-Israeli war, that they're worried about those guys being ethno-supremacists? That's fucking wild.
No, that's not what I said.
I don't care about any of this. Nothing you say is going to convince me unless you come with like some incredibly compelling evidence, because historically, that is the most unbelievable statement I've ever heard in my entire life.
Well, that's great, because that's not what I said, right? I'm not saying these 60 countries or all these other people. I'm talking about the Palestinian Arabs who are living in the area where this ethno-state has popped up next to them, right? And where they've been living for decades. They've grown up with this ethno-state next to them that has a separate status for Jews and non-Jews, where the religious right that has fucking terrible beliefs regarding non-Jews is gaining power over the last couple of decades. Right?
Well, isn't there an equal treatment under the law generally, or is it like, what, do you have to be like Jewish to marry somebody or whatever? Isn't it generally like pretty equal treatment under the law? It's not like they have like ethno divides in terms of like legal treatment for.
Yes and no. I think that so like I said, the religious right in Israel has been gaining power, I think, in recent years. One expression of this, and this is very controversial within Israel. So I'm not saying that every Israeli Jew believes this. I'm not saying this. It's controversial in Israel and among Jews in the United States. The nation-state law, which made it explicit that Israel is a nation for Jews,
sure,
the Jewish culture, the Jewish people, Jewish religion, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, it has to be a priority for like their legislation stuff. Sure, that's fine. Okay. You can call that like super controversial, but like, has that resulted in like discriminatory laws against like non-ethnic Jews or whatever? Or like, what are these huge differences that we're talking about? Because keep in mind, even with that nation-state law, you literally have Islamist parties that are represented in the Knesset. Like, you literally have people that advocate for Islamism that are part of their parliament. So, I mean, like, what are the ways that these laws are, like, destroying ethnic minorities or whatever in Israel?
I didn't say they're destroying ethnic minorities.
What is the uneven treatment? If they're ethno-supremacist.
Okay, hold on. So it's one of the driving factors behind the conflict. So, in the way that, so when they, even having the concern about demographics, and even having the opposition to a Jewish minority or the potential of a Jewish minority in the future is again, one of the driving reasons they pulled out of Gaza, pulled out of the West Bank, because they didn't want these people to request a vote. Right? Not just because they're afraid of what the Arabs might do to them, but because they literally want to have an ethno-religious state for the Jews. Right, so, and you can see this on the West Bank. The things that are happening on the West Bank, a lot of that is driven by religion, by the Jewish religion, right?
I don't know if they're scared so much about having an ethno-religious state, so much as they're scared that the group of people that most want to immigrate to their area seem to also be highly invested in their destruction. I think that's probably the driving pressure.
I agree that I'm going to agree that it's a combination, right? But I think that I don't think that it makes sense to disregard the religious aspect. On either side, there's absolutely a religious aspect on both sides, and the attitudes that come from the religious aspect are obstacles to peace.
Okay, hold on. What
you don't like the word peace to justice to whatever the fuck.
Wait, what percentage of like the Palestinian hatred for Israel comes from the fact that they have an ethno state?
I haven't seen that study. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna say like.
Okay, you laugh every time I ask you, because the problem is I'm trying to get a gauge for how much you think is relevant. I can give you rough percentages for what I think is contributing to the conflict. If you're unable to do that or unwilling to do so, then it tells me a lot about your position. Do you think this is like 1% of their hatred towards Israel, or do you think it's like 90% of their hatred towards Israel? If you're like can't even fathom, then why even bring it up as a point?
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't want to just pull a number out of my ass and lie to you.
I'm not asking you to give me like a statistical like 47.289% of the people that live in Hebron don't like Israel. I'm just curious, like what percentage do you think plays into the conflict? Because I don't see any of this brought up historically ever from any surrounding Arab state, from any Palestinian person, from any Palestinian leader, from any Arab leader, anybody ever. I've never in my life heard this reason. You are presenting this to me as an American that lives in America. You're presenting to me a novel reason for why Palestinians don't like Israel that also conveniently plays into your narrative. I've never heard this ever situated ever in these regions. Why would I not go by what the leaders say, right? Whether we're talking about Nasser in Egypt said he wants to remove all Jews from this land, from Palestine proper, okay, because he didn't think they belong there. Why wouldn't I listen to people like Arafat, who are so invested in the destruction of Israel that they're willing to coup other leaders around them to do it? Why wouldn't I listen to Hamas when they say that they want to get rid of all? Like, I got all these people that tell me over and over again, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. But you, an American in the West, are like, well, actually, I think it's just because they don't like the fact that Jews try to maintain their ethnic demographics there because they're worried they'll be genocided. Why would I believe that? Like, under what is the rationalization for that?
That's not what I said. Right? I'm not saying it's one or the other. I'm saying it's both. It's all the above.
But there's got to be like but we can't just say it's every single reason. There has to be like some things that are really big factors that we got to push.
Like so if you were going to ask me for like a what my perspective.
I don't think it's very complex.
Perception,
but go ahead.
My perception of like how big of an influence this is. I'm going to say probably like 45%.
Okay, but you've never heard a single Palestinian leader or any Arab ever state anything like this ever.
Let me explain. Yeah, because again, it's the ethno-state, but also the ethnocentrism, right? And also the religious right in Israel, and how the religion, the attitudes that come from the religion, are driving the settlers in the West Bank to continue their antagonism, and how like this all affects, right, the conflict, and these are all the hurdles that you need to get over. You can't just say, oh well, who gives a fuck? These Israeli settlers are doing this because they believe that they're owed the land because of this.
I don't think
they have.
I think that not only do they not care that they're ethnocentric, they probably would expect them to be. I don't think anybody has this genuine concern of this. Of course they do. That's why in Muslim caliphates, they literally had carve-outs for people to have their own little religious, sometimes even ethno-religious communities. They literally, everybody expects people to do this. I understand in America, that feels weird and bad because we're like the multicultural, diverse, blah, 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 blah. But in a lot of other parts of the world, they kind of expect that. It's like, yeah, Japan is really xenophobic. As an American, that sounds horrible. To Japanese, are like, yeah, fuck Westerners, fuck white people, fuck brown people, fuck that shit, right? Or if you go to the Middle East, yeah, they're going to say like, yeah, obviously we have ethnic preferences. Obviously we have preferences for our own religious group. Like obviously we discriminate against other types of religions. Like they literally kill people that leave their religion. They kill apostates. Like how is it so unbelievable that they would expect like, oh, of course I would expect Jewish people to be ethnocentric. That's part of what all of their Jewish conspiracy is based on. The idea that Jews all over the world share the same ethnic identity where they're trying to push for the, the funding and the support of the Israeli state. I think they would I don't think any Arab person would be like, we think that Jewish people should not be so ethnic centric. They would say like, we think Jews should get the fuck out of here and go be ethnic centric somewhere else.
Right. Okay, but this is why it matters though, because they're not going to go be ethnocentric somewhere else. They're being ethnocentric here, where there are many people who are not Jewish, right? Either living in the Jewish state or living right next to the Jewish state that is attempting to expand its borders because they want more land for their ethno state. So I don't think you can separate the two. I think it is something that needs to be addressed, and I think it's one of the major roadblocks to like a one-state solution.
So we're running into time. I know you have another debate coming up.
No, fuck Wick.
True.
I'm joking. I love Wick. He's beautiful.
Well, indeed. Shout out to Wick. Wick's a great guy. But I'm going to respect your time. And it seems like we've run into multiple roadblocks. This was as frustrating as it always is to debate with you, Stephen. But I do appreciate.
I'm just curious. Like, is there a single Palestinian or Arab leader that is advocating for like that agrees with any of these statements that either of you have made?
Which one specifically?
Like that. Like, oh, we just want like a peaceful, friendly, one-state solution where we all live in harmony, or we just want like peace with the Israelis so that we can like all exist together in two states. Like, where are these Israeli leaders? Where are these Arab leaders that say stuff like this? Or where's like the evidence in the past of history of Arabs wanting to pursue this?
So my understanding of leaders within Palestine, within Gaza, has been that they've been suppressed, killed, and any opposition to Gaza has been suppressed.
Okay, but hold on. Even the opposition, even the oppression in Gaza started because in 2004 and 2005, Abbas was trying to negotiate peace with Israel, and Hamas and other extremist factions couldn't stop fucking shooting rockets into fucking Israel.
Yeah, I think you misunderstood me. Well, you didn't misunderstand me. I misspoke, right? So when I say suppression of Gaza, I meant suppression of political leaders, political factions that might oppose Hamas, right? It might have some, like Hamas has suppressed them. So this is another reason I agree with you. There's no path forward without Hamas being wiped out and to some extent or taken out of power. But if you look at those polls, if you were to look at those polls again, I can do like a Google flu search right now, but I'm sure if you were to look at those polls again, typically what these Arabs are asking for is a single state with equal rights, not with more rights for Arabs or more rights for Jews, but with equal rights. And again, I can understand the Israeli opposition to this. It's totally reasonable for them to think that if they were to have this wave of new Arabs in the country, they'd be fucking genocided. I totally get that, which is why I think that it needs to be taken out of the hands of these two groups of people. I don't think that they can deal with this alone. You have two traumatized groups of people lashing out at each other. I think the international community needs to take a stronger role in settling things there.
Which means, and the stronger role is just a ceasefire and...
No. I mean, like I said earlier, I would agree with like an occupation by Saudi or even by the United States, some other organization that comes in, boots on the ground to ensure that to ensure the security, to ensure that there's no like a further conflict after this current thing. And then from that point, I think you can start working toward peace and figuring out what that looks like. But I don't think you can just leave Israel to do it on their own, because I think from their perspective, it's totally reasonable for them to want to just ethnically cleanse these people and get rid of them because they're fucking crazy. Like I understand that perspective. I think it's reasonable, but not okay.
Okay, if you scroll down, this is from 2000 and 2022. If you go to page 7.
Oh, hold on. Just
Figure 2.
Oh, I see.
You can see support for the two-state solution and two alternatives among Palestinians and Israeli Jews in 2020 and 2022. It looks like more Palestinians and more Israeli Jews, both of them support one non-democratic state without equality. And then more than that, for almost everybody else, they support a two-state solution. So
I'm sorry, which page is this on? I think I missed
the bottom of page 7. I don't know where this idea comes from, that the majority of Palestinians, or even the majority of Israelis, support a one-state solution with equal one voice, one vote, or one person, one vote.
Okay, so that's interesting. So first off, I think if this is correct, then you're right. But I guess I would draw attention to how close those two numbers are, and it's not as if the one state with the equality thing is just at 5%. There is support for this within the country, right? Within it seems like Israel and Palestine, I think you said. So if that's the case,
the support is 20% of people for Israeli Jews and 23% of people
as of when
for Palestinians. In 2022, I don't know what the numbers look like now. I imagine they're probably worse now.
They're probably much worse now. Yeah.
So in 2022, in December, only 20% of Israeli Jews support a one democratic state with equality, and only 23% of Palestinians in 2022 support one democratic state with equality.
Okay, but I think this kind of feeds into the other point that Prem and I were making, is that you have two groups of people here that from their perspectives have legitimate reasons to hate each other and not to want to be.
No, why do you? Okay, we just disagree on that. You guys why? Believe this, but you won't admit it. You keep thinking that both sides have equal reasons to not like each other, but that's not. If they both did. Then why do you keep saying they both have reasons to hate each other?
Right, hold on.
From their own perspectives, doesn't matter. We're third parties. We're not any of them. We don't have to evaluate it from their. Sorry.
Okay, because I don't think you come to peace by fucking hassling over who's exactly right about every single thing.
You literally do. That's literally how you come to peace. Yes. What do you mean that's not? I'm sorry, hold on. Can you give me an example of a single conflict through all of human history that's been resolved without somebody considering which side might be more right or which side might be more wrong? Did the United States not pick good guys and bad guys in World War I, in World War II, in Vietnam, in Korea, in the First or Second Gulf War, in literally every single intervention? No, we don't. We just...
No, we picked the side that was more beneficial to our interests.
But you don't think the sides that are... Okay, even if you say the side that's more beneficial to our interest, we're making a choice there. It's not just... like random, or we're not saying like both sides ought to resolve their things equally.
Do you think any of those conflicts are in any way comparable to this current situation?
No, I don't think they're necessarily, I don't know if any of those would be analogous, but I'm just saying that when I'm looking at a conflict, I wouldn't just say like, oh, we should just resolve it 50-50 for everybody. You would consider which side you think.
No one has said that.
But if you're considering, you're implying it when you keep saying that both sides, when you say that both sides, when you say both sides need to take steps towards peace, the implication is that both sides are equally responsible for the unpeace. That's the implication.
No, we've said it multiple times. Okay, I love you, Steve. I really do. I really have a deep appreciation for you, friend. But like, I don't know why that you've like refused to listen to us on these points. Like, I've tried.
Okay, I'm sorry. Then hold on. Then I could be totally wrong. I'm totally wrong. I'm sorry. Then can both of you please state who should make a bigger effort towards peace?
I don't know about bigger effort.
Okay, you were just about to do a whole fucking rant when I was completely right with what I said. Thank you.
Oh,
Jesus. Oh my God.
No. How does that prove anything? How does it prove anything? I'm like bigger effort. Like maybe the Palestinians, sure, the Palestinians should make a bigger effort. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dooby.
I think we're in debate mode. Okay, so I think what he means bigger effort, I guess. So from both their perspectives, the effort put forward is going to be massive, right? Palestinians are going to need to be okay with not fucking bombing Israelis, right? Not murdering Israelis if they want peace to happen. Israelis need to be okay with not fucking autistically going around and fighting every single Hamas member, murdering them, like or killing them. Like, so yeah, there's going to be an effort, right? Short term, and then long term, you need to figure out, okay, well, hey, in the West Bank, this West Bank thing, right? Is it a massive effort for us to stop building settlements there, or do we say that the Palestinians just need to put up with it and stop giving a fuck about the settlements and just live with it, right? Say, hey, we lost this territory. Shit, it is what it is. Like, yeah, there's going to be effort on all sides, right? What we're saying is it doesn't make sense to say that one in the West Bank situation or in the Gaza situation, one side is more right. It really doesn't fucking matter because what I'm saying is you have two groups of people who have, from their perspectives, which might be wrong, might be right, who gives a fuck? They have legitimate grievances and
do you think one side's grievances are more legitimate than the other here, or no?
I'm saying, look, we're saying that in the opposite of what you're saying. That like,
does one side have a stronger moral authority here?
We do care about the what peace is, right?
Okay.
Whatever that might look like, whether it be one state or two states.
Does
right?
one side have a stronger moral authority here?
Understand that we can have a peace that is unjust.
Hi. Does one side? Would you say one side has a stronger moral authority? Hi. Thank you, babe. I love you.
I love her too, or whoever this person is.
Do we agree with that, or do we disagree with that?
Oh, love them too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to misgender.
Okay, listen, I love you guys. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Now you want to leave? Okay. All right. Anyway, Stephen, hold on, just last thing. Thank you, Stephen, for engaging in this conversation. It was super frustrating, as usual, right?
Always. Yeah.
To the audience, twitch.tv/Primecayes, right, as it's spelled here, or youtube.com. I'm going to stick around for a little bit and, answer questions if people want to talk and decompress and all that shit. But anyway, again, thank you, Stephen, for having the conversation, and to Dooby.
Right. You both have perms in my Discord, so if you want to jump on a fight, just let me know. Bye.
Absolutely. Bye.
See you later, mister.